open 3 additional tabs since I said I was going to close some tabs, so I didn't sit down. This is good. Happening, Awesemo MLB fans. Happy Saturday. First Saturday of the baseball season. We've got a loaded day of baseball on tap. My name's Terry McBride. I'm here with Chris Pinnell. We're going to break down the main slate, the night slate, the 5 games that are coming up about 7 hours from now. We're going to go through those. We've got Emac and Gundacker coming up immediately after this show with a live before lock for the 1 o'clock slate. So we're not leaving you guys hanging on those. This is a strategy show, kind of a laid back morning show. And we're going to be focused on the main game, the 5 main games for the evening tonight. So Chris and I are going to take a look at all of those. We'll go through the pitching matchups, the top stacks, everything important that you need to know about this. But first, Chris, your first show, my first show with you. And how you feeling so far about the MLB season? How's your season started? And what's going on, man? Good to be on a show with you.
Hey, what's up, Terry? Looking forward to it. Usually over on the NASCAR side of things. So switching it up. I do have NASCAR a little bit later, but yeah, talking some baseball for the main slate. It's been a pretty good season so far. I know it's only been 2 games, but last night went pretty well. Had a nice Houston stack. Got all those home runs last night. Angels disappointed me a little bit, but yeah, it's been fun so far. I like the slate tonight. I wouldn't say there's a load of great pitching options, but there is 3 I'm going to be building around. And plus we have the Dodgers in Coors Field, which is going to be pretty fun to talk about too.
Yeah, first Coors game on a main slate. First one I'll be talking about of the season. Those are always an adventure. You know, we know we either lean into them with all the chalk or we kind of try and find different ways around it. You got to talk about the pitching in there. So that'll be a fun one to dig into. So we'll get started here. We're brought to you by Prize Picks today, you guys. Make sure you're going over there, checking them out. Great site. I say it all the time. I hate that I can't play them in New Jersey because we have so many people posting screenshots and just cleaning up over there. So we'll get into Prize Picks in a little bit. Hit the like button and subscribe. Make sure you're getting all the notifications when we go live. Hitting the thumb helps us out. So we really appreciate that when you guys do that. Make sure you're over on the site checking out the free premium tools and content. I might have old information about which ones those are today, so I'm going to skip over that, but we've got some free stuff up on the site. We're also doing a podcast giveaway. If you head over to our Awesemo podcast channel, give us a 5-star review and then leave your Twitter handle or your Awesemo username. We're going to put you into a raffle to win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Not bad for just jumping in there, giving us a 5-star review for podcasts that hopefully you like already and you think are 5-star worthy, but we'll bribe you to say they are. So we're going to get into these, go game by game through this slate and start things off. Chris, anything just, kind of top of the head in an overarching kind of a way that you're seeing for this slate, for baseball in general this season? Any concerns about, weather, postponements, overarching 50,000 foot view of this one? Anything come to mind?
Yes, looking at the weather, I mean, I know we've had weather issues so far for the first 2 slates this year. It looks like it's going to be pretty calm for the most part. Looks like there might be some slight weather for the New York Mets-Washington game, which I believe is the first game we're about to talk about. But overall, it looks like we shouldn't have to worry too much. Nice weather all around, obviously still a little bit cooler in some spots. But yeah, we shouldn't have any concerns there. And I'm just looking forward to another slate.
Yeah, not too bad. Nothing jumped out at me when I was glancing at it. It's always something we want to keep an eye on, but for tonight, it looks like we're pretty clean as far as rain goes. We've got 50 degrees, in most of the East Coast games, and then we're trending out in. If we're looking at like Arizona, it's in the 90s. The Colorado games in the mid 70s. Pretty nice out there, and then LA ticks that back down to the 60s. So we don't have the real premium hitting environments that we do in the midsummer outside of Coors Field. So we might see that. Any concerns for you about just the nature of the hitting environments as far as that's something that you focus on, pay attention to around, humidity, temperature, hitting that lean toward hitting versus pitching? Is that something that's a focus for you as you review the slates, which games to attack?
Yeah, it certainly is. I'm usually a pretty big weather guy. I usually try to wait a little bit closer to lock because obviously things can change quite a bit. But yeah, I'm always looking into weather. I mean, in the summer when it's like super humid at Camden Yards, I mean, the ball tends to fly. Same can be said for Coors Field, although it typically always flies at Coors. But when it's up to 100 degrees in the summer and humid, I mean, you're going to see some pretty high game totals. And it's for a good reason because the ball definitely is impacted by the weather.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always fun to watch those game totals inflate from like the low eights, the 7.5s that you get at the very beginning of the season up into the 9.5s, 10s, 11s, and so on. So yeah, we'll see all of that coming up, but could be a good condition for hitting. We've also got, though, short spring training. We've seen some pitchers on some pretty limited pitch counts, 80s, 90s. Any concerns around specific pitchers that you've heard about, pitch limits, anybody to call out off the top before we really get into the game by game where you're really concerned about those pitch limits? Or do you think everybody's just kind of on that blanket, like 80, 90-ish expectation?
Yeah, so I was trying to deep dive last night in some of these pitchers and how far they got into potentially their last spring training start. I know Zach Davies had some concerns where he might be used as maybe a potential opener or piggyback kind of guy to start the season, but he did end up getting up to 60 pitches in his last start in spring training. But everyone else, it's kind of probably what we're going to see throughout the beginning of the season. But from what we've seen already through the first two starts, I want to, first guy we're going to mention, Chris Bassett. He did get up to 90 pitches in his last start. So that's something I was really looking into heading to the slate, because guys with long leashes to start the season, long enough comparatively, 90 pitches compared to some guys getting 60, 70, that could be pretty beneficial, especially over on FanDuel where you get that quality start bonus.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bassett's a pitcher that I like. I was on him through last year. He was on my dynasty team last year up until the very end when I needed to deal him to win the title, but definitely got a little place in my heart. He's a guy who pitches deep into games too. So let's just use him to kind of pivot directly into that game. We've got the Mets in DC favorite over the Nationals, 9-run total in this one. Chris Bassett on the hill, righty, going for the Mets. And Joan Adon, I don't know how to actually pronounce that name. It might be Juan, it might be Joan. I'm not entirely sure. Do you know on Joan Adon here?
I was hoping to ask you how to pronounce it. So
I don't want to read like a Spanish name into it. If it's not, I'm not sure. So I'm going to go Joan Adon. I'm not entirely sure. We'll get to it. He only threw 5 1/3 innings last season, so we don't have a ton on him. But what are you seeing here as far as the pitching breakdown? We'll go pitchers and then we'll jump into the hitters.
Yeah, so the pitchers, I obviously like Chris Bassett a lot tonight. He's one of my favorite pitchers. I imagine he's going to make my cash game pitcher pool tonight. There's like 3 guys I like, and the rest are kind of middling options. I'm not really on Don whatsoever, but looking at Bassett so far in spring training, through just over 9 innings, had 9 strikeouts. And like I mentioned, the big thing here is that he got up to 90 pitches in his final spring start, and he is a guy that can work pretty deep into the game. And last season was very solid for Bassett, around a 25% K rate. Xip and Sierra both below 4 total. So I can definitely get behind Bassett. The Washington Nationals lineup isn't anything to be too concerned about after you get through the top half of the order. Definitely some good bats there. Juan Soto, Nelson Cruz, and Cesar Hernandez up top. But I'm definitely on Chris Bassett of the Awesemo top pitchers tool. Definitely like some in the top 3. So I'm fully on board there.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty good price on DK. 8,000 is like a fair mid-range price for a pitcher as talented as Chris Bassett. Any concerns around the ownership on Bassett? He's pulling around a 40% ownership projection on DK. A lot. He's in single digits on FanDuel because he costs 9,700. I think that makes him a great FanDuel target. Are you at all concerned about the ownership on DK?
If it's cash games, obviously not, because we talked about in the pre-show where you play a lot of tournaments and I play a lot of cash games. So I think it'll be good for us to kind of go back and forth there. As far as tournaments go, I'm usually more concerned about a high owned stack than I am pitchers, because pitchers are easier to project. And especially so early in the season, when we know a guy's going to hopefully get around 90 pitches in this game, I'll just eat that chalk. I'd rather get different somewhere else. So instead of using maybe a Dodgers stack with Chris Bassett, maybe use a lower owned stack and just try to get different instead of just fading a good pitcher tonight.
I think that makes a ton of sense. Bassett definitely a top target for me on the FanDuel slate for tournaments, for all formats really. And then, yeah, I'm with you. I think I would just ride with that public ownership, especially on a slate where I don't really love a lot of the other pitching options. We'll get into it. Like you said, I see 3 that are, relatively playable. So Bassett's definitely one of my top targets here. While you were talking, I looked it up and it is Joan Adon. So we'll talk about Joan Adon. Any opinions about him? He's only 4,000 on the DK slate, pulling 17.2% ownership based on that price in tournaments. A rock bottom discount price, 7,600 on the FanDuel slate, puts him in a totally different category. Are you looking at him as a value piece on DK, particularly for tournaments? Is it somebody you would be interested in as a value piece for cash?
I'm not personally. He's not part of that 3 pitcher pool that's definitely in my sites for cash games and in tournaments as well. I actually really like the Mets tonight, so I'm just gonna, if Adon's gonna get any ownership, I'm just gonna be pretty much off of that. I mean, he's a young guy, not a big prospect or anything. Debuted last year, like we talked about, did strike out 9 versus Boston, made some limited starts in AA and AAA last season. So far in spring training, he's given up 7 runs in 9 innings and projects to be a sub 20% K guy. I realize that price tag is very appealing on DK at 4K because, I mean, if you go the 4K Don route, you can pretty much play all the Dodgers you want. So I think people that are stacking Dodgers might be getting to a Don quite a bit. And it's just not something I feel too comfortable with. And on FanDuel, it's a tougher buy too at $7,600.
Yeah, 7,600. I just don't want to be there on the FanDuel slate at 4,000. Like you said, I think he's just the key to unlocking those stacks on DK, and you almost don't care what he's giving you in terms of the pitching score. If he gives you a few points at that price and you're getting to those Coors Field bats in a full Dodgers stack, that's pretty appealing. I just don't know what this kid's going to give us at all on the mound. So it's not really a target for me. I think you could probably make things work a little bit if you wanted to. I mean, Zach Davies isn't exactly appealing at 6,000 as the next highest priced guy, but you can look around in, I wish somebody wasn't messaging me so that it was popping up over my stats. You can look around on the pricing board and, maybe you look to, geez, I don't even know. Who do you look to if we're not going to Joan Adon actually at that point on the value board? Because to me, it tightens up. Davies, like I said, I don't love that. And you've got the questions about the length. Kyle Wright, I guess, would maybe be there against that weaker Cincinnati lineup, but he's 7,100. You're already increasing that salary by almost a full hitter price. So there's really not a comparable value. Do you think there's a way to put together a similarly competitive Dodgers at Coors, if that's where you're headed, stack with a different pitcher as the SP2?
I mean, if you're going to do, I know Kyle Wright's going to pick up some ownership just because of the lack of pitching options. If you pivot to Gutierrez, it doesn't feel good because obviously the Braves have a good lineup. It doesn't feel good at all, but no Freeman, no Acuna still. They do strike out a little bit, and Gutierrez did start a little hot last year. It definitely fills it off quite a bit, and he did not have a good spring training. But I mean, if you're looking for the pivot guy to stack with the Dodgers just to get off some ownership, maybe Gutierrez, but I can't say anything too nice about him.
Yeah, I've got all of those guys kind of at the bottom, all in red in my conditional formatting, and then like the 3 guys in green above it. So like it's just a mess of a pitching slate. I'm just trying to see what other options we have. But taking a look at some of the bats in this game, you mentioned liking the Mets. I agree with that. I like the Mets here. I'm getting some decent power marks, not overwhelming power marks like they've been the last couple of days, but a nice number on Pete Alonso in my home run model. He's obviously a destroyer of baseballs. And they've just got some good things going in this lineup, the talent that they brought in. So I assume you're going to be getting to some Mets stacks. If you're building one lineup for a tournament, single entry tournament, is the Mets stack in that lineup?
Right now, I do have quite a few Mets. I obviously haven't finalized anything yet. We're pretty far out from the slate, but I'm liking a lot of these Mets quite a bit. I mean, if I'm doing a 4x4 stack on FanDuel, I'm probably going to, like, just for my one main lineup, I'm probably going to get to the Mets, and you get some decent price points on these guys. Brendan Nimmo leading off was very chalky yesterday. I assume he's going to be very chalky once again. 4,100 on GK, only $2,600 over on FanDuel. Eduardo Escobar is relatively cheap at 42 and 3,000. Robbie Cano is going to be popular again, only $2,400 and $2,200. It's never, it'd be fun playing Robinson and Cano, but if he's going to hit in the middle of the order for a team total, on a team with a team total above 5 versus Adon, who just, I don't think is going to be a top level pitcher by any means. And it's a small sample size, but he hasn't been terrible so far this year. So yeah, I'm looking at all the Mets here quite a bit. And outside of Alonso and Starling Marte, it's kind of easy to get to.
Yeah, it is. And, they're not on the DK slate, especially, they're not overwhelmingly owned through the middle, like Escobar, Alonso, both under 10%. Mark Canha at 4%, I think, is an interesting point of differentiation on the DK slate. Same thing on FanDuel at only 7%. They're pulling a little bit more ownership through the top 4 on the FanDuel slate, but again, it's not like overwhelming where you can't go there. Maybe you make one different choice, like maybe instead of Nimmo, you go with a Marte, Escobar, Alonso, and skip Cano and go to Canha or something like that, just to make a little bit of a different choice there to differentiate a lineup, looking for those unique combinations. Are you somebody that's willing to drop down to the bottom of a lineup, stack out the bottom of it, do wrap around builds from 8, 9, 1, 2s, things like that? Or is it mostly focused on like top 5, top 6 hitters?
I'm usually focusing on the top 5, top 6. Now, when I'm doing 150 max builds, I will do it not frequently, but I will get there sometimes. But just really depends on who's kind of on the bottom of the order. Like some lineups are really weak down low, and I'm just kind of avoid it. But some lineups, stack top to bottom, like the Dodgers, you can do a wraparound stack there, and I wouldn't have any problem with it.
Yep. Yeah. A lot of these teams these days are playing 1 through 9, and then the other guys are spending half the salary of a Max Scherzer on their entire lineup, and they're the Baltimore Orioles. So, any
Right.
love you mentioned on the Nats? I think we agree the top 4, well, hitters 2, 3, and 4, plus Cesar Hernandez, if he's getting on base ahead of them, are pretty dynamite in this lineup. Juan Soto, one of the best hitters in the league, Nelson Cruz, Josh Bell. After that, for me, this lineup kind of falls off. Are you going to any national stacks here against Bassett, or is it just Bassett's going to be an overwhelming part of the plans? Not really much room for national stacks.
Yeah, it's interesting from a tournament perspective because we know Bassett's going to pick up a lot of ownership, but I think it's for good reason. Like, he's just a solid pitcher. If I'm going to have a lot of Bassett tonight, that just naturally means I can't have a lot of Washington national stacks. If in your non-Bassett lamps, if you want to get maybe some one-offs like Juan Soto, who obviously crushes right-handed pitching, Nelson Cruz, both guys with over 230 ISOs last year. Josh Bell had over a 200 ISO, and Cesar Hernandez isn't the worst bettor out there. Plus, he's got the prime spot in the order. It's fine as a contrarian stack if you just want to get to a couple one-offs, but for me, they're not really part of the plan tonight.
Yeah, same here. I don't really expect that I'll be getting to many national stacks across 150 lineups. They'll be in there, here and there a little bit. Maybe I'll be pulling some Juan Soto and some Nelson Cruz because they're fairly low owned for their talents. Juan Soto, 5.7% ownership for 4,400. I feel like that's a little cheap for him on FanDuel and a little light on the ownership. Same thing on the DK in terms of the ownership, but he's over 6,000 over there. So it's a little bit different in terms of the pricing. But I love getting to that bat when he's not going to be popular as a one-off. When he is a super popular one-off, I tend to go away from those star players. But if I can get that kind of a bat in there for cheap and for a low ownership total, I'm going to do it. Anything else from this game before we hop over to the next one?
No, not really. I'm pretty high on the Mets tonight, one of my absolute favorite stacks. I'm not going to be nearly as high owned as the Dodgers, so I think you're getting just decent value because of that. And love the price points and love the spot. Team total above 5, and yeah, pretty high on the Mets tonight.
Makes a lot of sense, guys. I saw a couple things in the chat. First, yeah, definitely RIP Dwayne Haskins. Apparently, that's odd news to be getting in the morning. But
really?
make sure you're sticking around too, guys. I should have probably done this one first and then the Dwayne Haskins one. But make sure you're sticking around for the next show, guys. I did see people asking about the afternoon slates. Emac and Gundaker are doing live before lock right after this, directly into that slate. So we're gonna have a ton of information coming up for that. So don't sweat it. We got you covered. Stick around. We're going through the main slate here. So if you want to jump behind the scenes, guys, with Awesemo Plus MLB, we've got all the great tools and content for every DFS sport out there, but we absolutely crush it for MLB. You can get the Awesemo Plus weekly pass for $29.95, includes all full access to the premium content, tools on awesemo.com, including projections, ownership projections. This says top golfers. I'm not sure why it says top golfers in an MLB plug, but it does. So we're going to throw the top golfers tool in there for you. It's not going to be part of it, but it's in here. We probably should say the top pitchers tool, the top stacks tool, the lineup builder, all kinds of other stuff. If you're only looking for the MLB, you sign up for the MLB plan. If you're looking for coverage for everything and you want to get access to that top golfers tool, sign up for the platinum plan. That's the one that covers all the different sports. Fantasy Cruncher is always a paid add-on to any of our plans. We've also got the Express plans. $4.95 weekly for MLB. You can jump in there. Doesn't include Fantasy Cruncher, doesn't include the full-blown projections. What we get is rankings. You get our ownership rankings, our projection rankings, and it lays it out. For baseball especially, that's powerful. You can build lineups just with that, with a sense of where the best hitting is, where the best stacks are. So that's a pretty powerful tool for $4.95 a week. We're running a special on that. For $1, you can get that $4.95 weekly pass up through April 11th. Jump in, use promo code FASTBALL, all caps, FASTBALL, the old number 1. That'll activate the offer. It's good through April 11th to get on the Express plan for MLB only for $1. Not too bad. Hit that up, guys. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. Stick around after we're done here for Emac and Gun for Live Before Lock. We're going to jump over to the next game on the main slate. That's going to be the Cincinnati Reds in Atlanta. Reds have Vladimir Gutierrez on the hill. Braves are countering with Kyle Wright on the mound. What are we seeing in this one in terms of pitching, Chris? You like either one of these pitchers? Are they on your list 03?
Yeah, we kind of hinted at it already, where it's kind of like a gross game as far as a pitcher's perspective goes. We have Kyle Wright, who is kind of interesting. I think he could flash some potential strikeout upside. Plus, the Reds did lose several key hitters in free agency. Vladimir Gutierrez, the guy we talked about, where he started off hot last season, definitely fizzled off under a 20% K rate when it was all said and done. Start with Kyle Wright here. He gave up 1 run in spring training over 7 innings, had 8 strikeouts, 137 innings last year in AAA at a 24% K rate with a 3.75 xFIP. In his limited time in the big leagues last year, very small sample size, but had a 14% walk rate and an xFIP above 8. But I hate to put too much into a small sample size. if I had to pick a pitcher from this game, I'm thinking Kyle Wright would be the way to go.
Yeah, I can get behind that too. The thing that I like mostly for Wright, I think, is the depleted Reds lineup that he's going to be going against. They're not awful. They've got some decent hitting up through the top, top 6, top 7 here, depending on what we think of Mike Moustakas. If we think Nick Senzel's going to come around this season, and a lot of variables there, but they're not the threatening Reds lineup that they were last year. So I think Wright has a chance to get through. Just looking through some of the numbers he's put up in the past, we've seen him in spots in the show. We haven't seen an extended stretch from him in the majors. And this is going back over the course of a few years. His first opportunity in the majors was in 2018. He gave us 6 innings and a quick cup of coffee, but they tried to bring him up in 19, tried to bring him up in 20, and he hasn't really stuck at the major league level. He's a middling strikeout rate guy. He's hit the mid 20s in AAA, but he hasn't been able to get up over 20 in his limited appearances in the majors. Any concerns around the strikeout acumen for Wright in terms of what we can expect from just aggregating fantasy points for us here? He's not totally bargain basement. He's 7,000 on FanDuel, 7,100 on DK. So I'd like a few strikeouts for that price. It's not like a Joan Adon where he's 4,000 and I don't really need much. So any real concerns about that? Or do you think he can find a few strikeouts in this Reds lineup?
You might be able to find a few. I mean, if you look at the total lineup here and their strikeout rate versus righties since last year, we're looking at a 21% K rate. So it's not like we're in the upper 20s where these guys are just striking out a ton. India's at 23%, Naquin's at 23, Pham's at 22. Like, these guys really aren't terrible as far as the strikeouts go. And some of these guys do have some decent pop versus righties. So again, like, I'm trying to find positives in Kyle Wright, and I mean, it's just hard for me to do it. Like, I just don't like either of these pitchers in this game. Like, yeah, I think he's somewhat okay. The Awesemo top pitcher tool, I believe, has him in 4th in ownership right now, which is kind of scary that a lot of people might end up getting to Kyle Wright. But I think they kind of have the same thought process that we have, where there's 3 good pitchers on this slate, and then the rest are just like, where the heck do we go?
Yeah, it definitely seems like he's pulling that. And then if you look on the FanDuel slate, he's got a 10% chance of being the top pitcher, and he's pulling a 28.5% ownership mark. So I want nothing to do with Kyle Wright on the FanDuel slate at that point. I think he's more viable on DK. Those numbers are a lot closer. You're not getting positive leverage in the way we term leverage, but I think it's close enough that he's at least a serviceable SP2 at that 7,100 price. But yeah, it's not comfy, but it's that kind of slate, I think. As far as Gutierrez, 3.5% of the field on him, only 6,500 on DK. You mentioned the strikeouts that are present in this Braves lineup. We've got a few guys, into the mid 20s. We've got an Adam Duvall over 30%, 31.4% last year. Austin Riley, as good a hitter as he is, was 25%. Dansby Swanson, 25%. Gutierrez, not a big time strikeout guy either. 114 innings and a 17.7% strikeout rate. I'll kind of ask it the same way. Do you think he can find enough strikeouts in this Braves lineup to give any kind of relevance at 6,500 with that low ownership? Like, is it worth getting to 10% on him on the DK slate and just go double the field?
Honestly, I might feel more comfortable being overweight on Gutierrez than it would Kyle Wright, just to try to get off some of that chalk, especially on FanDuel. Like, I just noticed that he's projected to be the highest owned pitcher on FanDuel as of right now. That could obviously change throughout the day, but that sounds terrifying. I want no part of that. I am right there with you. So far for Gutierrez in spring training, it hasn't been good. He's given up 9 runs in 9 innings and projects to be a sub 20% K rate pitcher in most models. And yeah, there is some strikeouts with these guys, and Adam Duvall was over 30% last year versus right-handed pitching. But with all those strikeouts comes a lot of power too, which they can definitely get to Gutierrez. Rosario last year, 207 ISO versus righties. Ozzie Albies, 214 ISO. Matt Olson, 224. I mean, it's just definitely not a good spot to limit power here. So yeah, while there might be some strikeout upside, there's definitely a big power threat in this Braves lineup as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at the Braves versus right-hand pitching as a whole, using last year's numbers for this year's active roster, 210 ISO against righties was 2nd overall in baseball, and a 4.49% home run rate was 1st overall in baseball. 193 home runs against righties last season was also 1st overall in baseball, and that surpasses the next highest team by 43 home runs. So they were essentially like an Adam Duvall, better than everybody else in terms of hitting home runs off righties. That's what's going to happen in this game, as far as my model can tell. As far as we can, legitimately guess with like Gutierrez on the mound, I expect some home runs out of this Braves lineup tonight. Are you stacking Braves here? Is this a go-to target for you?
Yeah, I can definitely get to some Braves. They have 5.5 team total, which looks pretty good on this slate. I mean, if there wasn't a Coors Field, I would think the Braves are going to pick up a lot of ownership. But yeah, the only problem with the Braves is the meat of the order is very expensive. But outside of that, it's Adam Duvall is not overly expensive. Travis Arnaud, Alex Dickerson, all these guys are pretty cheap. Just besides the meat of the order, and Eder Rosario leading off $4,300 and 3,000 on FanDuel. So as long as you can find the salary for it, I'm definitely on the Braves.
Yeah, and I like that the Coors game is probably pulling a little bit of ownership away from this. I think it's a really good spot. And it allows us to, Matt Olson on FanDuel, 17%, DK 12%. That's pretty good for one of the best power hitters in the league going up against this pitcher with the platoon advantage. You put him together with a relatively low-owned Austin Riley for a fair price. I mean, Austin Riley at 4,700 on DK, that's a pretty good price. 3,900 is about right on FanDuel, but I feel like he's cheap on DK for a guy who hit 33 home runs, went 303, 367, 531 with a 227 ISO, created runs 35% better than average last year. So I'd like to be in the, Olson, Riley, Albies, Duvall business. I really like Dansby Swanson's bat. He was my home run call yesterday and didn't come through, but a cheap shortstop who's always unpopular, who had an 11.4% barrel rate and 42.4% hard hit last year. Don't sleep on Dansby Swanson when putting together Braves stacks in general. 27 home runs last season, 201 ISO, guys. So he's definitely a key hitter in that lineup. I'll be interested too with the pricing, just how the batting order comes together when we get the confirmed lineup, because there are, like you said, the three key hitters in the middle are priced appropriate-ish, in the high threes, low fours on FanDuel, high fours, low fives on DK. A lot of the other guys are relatively inexpensive. So if they thread those in where they're hitting sequentially, that could come together in interesting ways in terms of price. So I'm definitely going to be targeting a lot of Braves stacks tonight. It's a team I'm excited about. Any love for the Reds going up against what I think agree is a pretty weak pitcher in Kyle Wright, but a bit of a depleted Reds lineup here?
Yeah, I mean, Kyle Wright can certainly be a tag. It's not a top level pitcher or anything. For me personally, I'm not getting the too many Reds. I just don't really love the lineup too much. Just from top to bottom, it's not the top stacks. So they have a slight positive leverage score, but it's not enough to make me really want to jump on them too much. Like, yeah, India's got some upside. Tyler Naquin was pretty good versus righties last year. Tommy Pham, the new additions, finally priced at $3,500 and sub 3K over on FanDuel. Joey Votto's like the big man appeal here, batting cleanup, but very expensive over on DK, over $5,000. I mean, some of these guys do have some pop versus right-handed pitching. India was over 200 last year. Tyler Naquin over 200. Joey Votto 352. I mean, it's a fine spot, but it's nothing that's really making me too excited.
Yeah, that's kind of how I'm seeing it too. Like, yeah, I wouldn't be at all surprised if this team got to Kyle Wright, with a Joey Votto in the middle of the lineup. I think that Tommy Pham is at least good for fantasy purposes. 15 home runs, 14 stolen bases, and 561 plate appearances. He can give us a little bit of fantasy scoring. Naquin, lefty righty, at least has a nice, bat as far as power goes. 207 ISO overall last season. So yeah, that's where I'd be focused, is like the top of the, the top four hitters. Maybe you work in a Nick Senzel or a Mike Moustakas for a little bit of differentiation. Tyler Stevenson, if you're playing on DK, where you need a catcher, is fine, but it's not a priority stack for me. It doesn't look like it is for the public. You can definitely get different by rostering this team, but I think there's better spots overall. So I'm going to be going away from them as well. Any love for anything else in this game? Anything else that we need to call out before we take care of some business and then move on?
No, I'm a pretty big fan of the Braves tonight. The Reds, contrarian mini stack maybe with Votto and Naquin, Pham in India if you want to, but outside of that, not huge on the Reds tonight.
Yep, I think we're on the same page there. So, guys, I mentioned in the top of the show, we're brought to you by Prize Picks today. Great partner for us, great site. We've got people just absolutely making money hand over fist over there because of because they're all sharp, and we've got a bunch of sharp members at our site, but also because we're providing some great projections. Prize Picks is a prop-based contest. You don't have to worry about sharks or optimizers or mass multi-entries. You're just building against the props, right? So you pick 5 props. If you put together a 5-player lineup and you hit all 5 of them, you can win out to 10 times your entry fee. If you download that in the App Store, Google Play, or you can play directly on prizepicks.com. For those of you who don't live in New Jersey and get restricted like I do, we've got those player prop projections up for free on the site. So you can check them out for NBA. We'll have some MLB going, I'm sure. You can go across sports and Prize Picks. It's a really, really killer site. Helps you put things together by using our projections. If you jump on the site and use promo code Awesemo, you get $100 first match on your first deposit. Not too bad. You can also get a free month of Awesemo behind the scenes. So you get Awesemo Platinum if you sign up using the link that's down there in the description of the video, and you make your first deposit at Prize Picks and you play a contest. You're going to receive an email that's automated process from them 24 to 48 hours after you go through the full fulfillment. You need to do all of those steps. You need to use the link to be able to have this happen. You'll get an email with a promo code to set up your account on Awesemo. So check out Prize Picks, guys. I'm telling you, people are making money like crazy over there using our tools and our content. So get in there, check them out, and win some money. Let's move on to the Coors Field game. Dodgers going into Colorado to take on the Rockies. Tony Gonsolin, pitcher that I like in general for this season. I think he's got a lot of upside. Not necessarily at Coors Field for me, taking on German Marquez, who is a very, very talented pitcher, kind of bogged down by the fact that he plays for the Rockies, but tends to pitch fairly well at Coors Field. He's more of a target generally when he's on the road. Every now and again, I'll throw in some random shares on German Marquez at home, but probably not against this Dodgers lineup. How are you seeing the pitching breakdown? Is there any reason to roster either of these pitchers?
I think the only reason to roster a pitcher in this game is if you want to completely battle the chalk with German Marquez. I'm not really someone to look into home road splits too much, but I think when you have a Coors Field pitcher, you got to at least look into it a little bit. And he actually has some decent splits at home compared to what he's done on the road, it's kind of odd. And Marquez is a good pitcher. We know that he's got strikeout upside, and he looked pretty strong in the spring. He had 18 strikeouts over 11 innings, went over 60 pitches in his final start. And look, it's a tough matchup versus the Dodgers. I think everybody knows that. It's pretty much an all-star lineup. It's absolutely loaded. So it can go south in a hurry. And I believe the team total for the Dodgers was approaching 7 last time. 6.5 last time I looked. And obviously he's going to come in as an underdog. Not sure if we'll even go deep enough to get a potential win if somehow the Rockies were able to get a lead here versus the Dodgers. But yeah, I don't have too much interest in Gonsolin. Did have a decent K rate last year. I think he's a solid enough pitcher, but I'm just not sure we're going to get quite the upside that we're looking for tonight. The price is appealing somewhat, and both sites is the same price tag, but walks were a little bit of an issue last year. But look, if you're just trying to get nuts, Marquez is the GPP dart that has at least some upside if the Dodgers just aren't hitting.
Yeah, and you're talking about, walking into 1% owned pitching, which is, it's not totally valueless, but yeah, it's a tough spot going up against this team. Weaker team in Coors Field. I can get to a 1% owned German Marquez for these prices. I think he's fairly cheap for his talents across both sites as well, but yeah, just not against this murderer's row of a Dodgers lineup. And the same is true for Gonsolin. Like I said, I think that he's going to have an effective year. He needs to cut down his walks. He was a hybrid pitcher, made 13 starts last year, 55 and 2/3, and he's been, back and forth in his short career to the pen and to the starting rotation for whatever they needed him to fill in. But he's got to cut down on the walks. He's got to cut down on letting guys get on base, but he's got very good swing and miss stuff. So 27.2% strikeout rate last year, 12.6% swinging strike rate. I like the stuff, but not in a Coors Field game. It's an improved, it's a decent top end of the Rockies lineup anyway, with Chris Bryant in there now, Charlie Blackmon, Brendan Rodgers is his premium kid on his way up, post-type prospect maybe, but I think we're going to get something out of him. CJ Cron, power hitter, and Ryan McMahon. Anything that you're looking to in the Rockies lineup here that you're really targeting for building stacks outside of those, top few hitters? Are you getting to any Connor Joe, Randall Grichuk type guys at the back end of Rocky stacks? And just in general, how many Rocky stacks are you looking at making as compared to Dodger stacks?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be a lot lower owned on my Rocky stack right now. I did a little, let's see if my pre-build's still here. So I was getting to the single digits as far as the Rockies exposure goes to, but I'm also extremely high on the Mets. So I think once I kind of even that out, maybe I get closer to double digits on the Rockies. It's just, I do think Gonsolin's a fine pitcher, so I'm not really trying to attack him too much, but we still have a respectable team total for the Rockies in this game. I believe we're at 5.5. So it's nothing I want to fade or anything. Obviously the Rockies lineup isn't nearly anything like the Los Angeles Dodgers lineup, but there's actually some decent power guys that we talked about. I mean, just looking at splits versus righties last year, Charlie Blackmon kind of took a backseat, 157 ISO, but Chris Bryant over 200. Rodgers was kind of low, but CJ Cron over 230. Ryan McMahon over 220. He got hot at portion last year. Connor Joe's got some decent pop and a decent WOBA batting average last year and decent slugging numbers, so I don't hate it. Randall Grichuk, new addition, 176 ISO. Diaz, the catcher, 230 ISO. So while it's not a super appealing lineup, I mean, the Rockies are not someone I'm going to completely fade tonight. I think if you're trying to go lower on the Dodgers, why not just take the other side of this game with the Rockies at lower ownership?
Yeah, and like you said, it's not like they've got a low total. They're the second higher. They're tied for the second highest total with the Braves on the board. They're also playing in Coors Field, just like the Dodgers are. They're going up against a guy who is an effective pitcher, but like I said, walks the world at times and puts a lot of guys on base. I think there will be opportunities here for this lineup, and I really like the ownership totals. Once you get past Brendan Rodgers hitting third, everybody's in single digits on DK. Same's true on FanDuel. So you're getting a lot of Coors Field hitters for cheap prices, single digit ownership. I don't really know what there is not to like about this other than the fact that it's the Rockies and, it's middling lineup. But outside, getting to a stack of Blackman, Bryant, Rogers, Crone, and McMahon off the top is great with these ownership numbers and with this the salaries where they are. Chris Bryant is discounted at 4,900. He's a $5,000 player. Charlie Blackman, despite the struggles last year, is at least at a fair price at 41. Brendan Rodgers is probably cheap at 39. So just clicking those guys together, but then having the ability to differentiate with a quality hitter like Connor Joe makes a lot of sense, with a guy who can definitely turn on one from time to time like Randall Grichuk. 41.1% hard hit rate for Grichuk last year, nothing to sneeze at. 182 ISO. The run creation for the bottom three hitters was a little concerning. You drop below a league average WRC plus, but I think you get a little bit of pickup on that from Coors Fields for this year. So the run creation should bounce back at least to league average-ish type levels for this lineup, I think. So I'm definitely going to be going to these guys. Talk to me a little bit about how to navigate the ridiculously high ownership on the other side of this game. It's a completely different situation over there. High prices, really high ownership. How are you putting Dodgers together? Because I know that, this is a chalk stack. This is where everybody wants to be.
Yeah, I'm not sure I need to tell anybody that the Dodgers are a good stack tonight. Ownership reflects that. The Awesemo top stacks tool reflects that. It's hard not to like the Dodgers, even if they're insanely high ownership. Their leverage score isn't that bad as far as the negatives go. So yeah, you're going to want to get to some Dodgers. If you're going to go underweight, I get it, but it's not a full fade scenario by any means. It's just absolutely terrifying if you do, and they just suck tonight and you have a lot of Marquez. Yeah, you'll be at the top of the leaderboard, but the chance of that happening are probably pretty slim. But if you're trying to get different and you still want to roster Dodgers tonight, like we talked about, you can just stack the bottom half of the order, wrap it around. Like most people are going to try to do the Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Trey Turner, Max Muncy deal, especially on FanDuel, just getting those four guys and getting your other favorite four stack. But if you just start with like Will Smith, Bellinger, Chris Taylor, Gavin Lux, those guys aren't going to go completely overlooked, but they're still very solid spots. And this entire lineup is in play. So if you just want a bottom half stack, that's perfectly fine with me.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go here. That's where we're getting into at least the mid-teens in ownership. It's not great in terms of the popularity, even at that level. Cody Bellinger is interesting. Super cheap on both sites. Stands out to me, obviously, former MVP type bat, really has struggled recently. 165, 240, 302 for Bellinger last season. Only 10 home runs and 350 plate appearances. Just atrocious year for a guy who was just one of the better hitters in baseball a couple years ago. But he's drawing 25% ownership on FanDuel, 30% on DK. Are you in the Cody Bellinger business, or is that a guy that you can just skip over in those end of lineup stacks?
You'd want to skip over him just as bad as he's been, especially with all the strikeouts. And I know he's been struggling, but the price tag, $2,600 on DK. Like, you have to imagine he's going to be a staple of a lot of people's lineups because that is just way too cheap. And if they can get to Marquez early on, I'm not really too concerned about anybody else they're going to go up against. And FanDuel, he's cheap as well. Like, yeah, it's scary, especially a chalky Cody Bellinger. I understand wanting to get away from there in tournaments, but man, if you're building one lineup tonight, it's really hard not to land on Cody.
Yeah, he's just so cheap with it, makes everything work. And then, yeah, especially if you're going to Joan Adon as the $4,000 pitcher, then you get the bonus of $2,600 Cody Bellinger on top. Maybe Bellinger is a guy, though, that like if you put Bellinger and Gavin Lux in there for cheap, at least that helps you maybe move up from Joan Adon to one of our disgusting Kyle Wright or Vladimir Gutierrez choices. So maybe you can use those guys that way as a lever up to those. But yeah, it's a little dicey with some of the ownership around here, but absolutely we want to figure out ways to roster the Dodgers. So we're focusing on unique combinations. Maybe we're putting them together with a less popular second stack, try and figure out differentiated pitching. But yeah, I want to be in the Dodgers business here for sure. Anything else to cover at Coors before we hop over to the next game?
No, just keep in mind they are going to be high owned, but finding ways to get different with that high ownership is going to be key in tournaments.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on to the Pods. We've got the Padres in Arizona facing the Diamondbacks. Joe Musgrove on the hill, top projected starter in my model. I think he's our top guy in our top pitchers tool, taking on Zach Davies on the bump for the Diamondbacks. Zach Davies down toward the bottom of my projections here. Not a surprise to anybody, I don't think, going against this at least respectable Padres lineup. I don't think personally that this is the greatest lineup in baseball, but they get things done. At least there's some quality major league hitting. I think they're overrated when there's no Fernando Tatis in the lineup, but I don't think they're going to struggle to score runs against Zach Davies here. Talk to me about Joe Musgrove to start with. I think he's by far the more relevant pitcher going up against a pretty weak Diamondbacks lineup.
Yeah, he's my favorite pitcher tonight. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the Diamondbacks have a hit against a starting pitcher yet this year.
Is that right? That had escaped my attention if that's accurate, but
I'm pretty sure Yu Darvish, I believe, had a no, and then Sean Manaea last night. So they've yet to do that. So maybe the trends continue here, but Joe Musgrove, even without that information, he was very good last year. 3.65 xFIP, 27% K rate. Diamondbacks have struggled so far. Last year, they had 25% K rate versus righties and some pretty overall really just not great numbers. So I'm definitely liking Musgrove quite a bit. I didn't have the greatest spring training, 9 runs in 11 innings, but that's something I'll be too concerned about. He's been able to get the job done. And yeah, I'm definitely really big on Joe Musgrove.
Yeah, definitely. Both sites target for me. I'm getting to somebody in the chat asked for, just $300 more. Would you rather, or just a few? Yeah, $300. Would you rather go to Musgrove over Chris Bassett on the FanDuel slate? For me, I think that'd probably be a pretty even split as my lineups come through Fantasy Cruncher and then get ranked into my model. Bassett would probably pull a little into the lead based on just being a little bit lower cost and a little bit lower owned than what we're pulling from Musgrove. Are you seeing those guys as relatively equal? Do you prefer one over the other? Or are you pushing one in for projection reasons or for ownership reasons?
They're pretty equal to me. I'd say the appeal on Chris Bassett is he should have a pretty long leash and potentially get that quality start bonus over on FanDuel. So if you want to maybe lean his way, I'd understand that.
Yeah, that makes some sense. And we talked about that with Bassett. He's definitely a guy who can chase those quality starts for us. In looking at my quality starts board, let me see if I can find him here real quick. He did have that injury at the end of the season. He took the liner off the old dome there. So he ended up making 27 starts. He turned in 16 quality starts, and that was a 59%. That ranked him 19th in baseball last season. So he was a good option for chasing quality starts last year. He gives you, relatively good average depth. And I think you would have had a few more of them if you hadn't taken that knock on the noggin at the end of the season. So I definitely want to be getting to shares of Chris Bassett here. Musgrove a little bit less reliable in terms of the quality start, but I think there's definitely meat on the bone as far as facing this weak Diamondbacks lineup. Any love for Zach Davies? Is there any reason to look at Zach Davies price-driven, matchup-driven, anything like that for you? Or are we just kind of skipping over him at 8,000 on the FanDuel slate and 6,000 on DK?
Yeah, I'm not planning on touching him on either. So I think the Padres are a decent enough stack tonight. I just don't see a reason to go to Davies. Not a pitcher that's really ever impressed me, kind of boring guy. I know he had that one hot start the one year, but I mean, looking at his overall numbers last year, we're talking about a guy with over a 5 xFIP, 5.3 Sierra, 17% K rate and double-digit walk rate. So he's not missing many bats. He's allowing guys on base. And while there's no Tatis in the lineup, obviously, it's still a good enough lineup that can get some damage done on Zach Davies.
Yeah, absolutely. And also just a guy who doesn't pitch deep. He only went 148 innings in 32 starts. So you see 148 innings. I was expecting like 25 starts or something like that. 17% strikeout rate and 11% walks. Yeah, there is just no real reason to go to him. Even if I think that this this Padres lineup is overrated, even if I think there are some strikeouts for him to find in there, it's just not a pitcher who can get it done. So does that lead you to Padres stacks against him? It looks like they're pulling in mid-range ownership on this slate. They're at fairly affordable prices. Are you getting any Padres bats?
Yeah, I'm getting some. Looks like they're like an even split over on the leverage on the MLB DFS top stacks tool. So it's not like we're getting an amazing spot here, but I wouldn't say there's a lot of outside of Coors. I mean, I wouldn't say the bats are amazing tonight. Yeah, you could have the New York Mets and maybe you want to obviously the Braves as well. But I mean, the Padres are just like a fine stack tonight. Looking at the team total, I believe they're sitting just above 5. And yeah, I can definitely get behind some Padres. Some of these guys do have some pretty decent splits versus right-handed pitching. Trent Grisham, potentially leading off 162 ISO last year. Manny Machado, prefer him versus lefties, but over 200 ISO. Jake Cronenworth's a really good hitter, over 200 ISO. Luke Voit, who I know you think is pretty overrated. I believe that's what I read.
Yeah. Not a big Luke Voit fan. I like the contact. I mean, he does make premium contact, 15.8% barrel rate, 51.8% hard hit last year. That's a little tough to ignore. I don't think he walks enough for the strikeout profile that he's got. You'd like to see him improve that. You'd like to see him improve the on base. And I think he's overrated as a power hitter. He's never hit more than the 22 home runs that he hit in 2020 to lead the league that year. That was an absurd, unsustainable home run rate that was over like 10. He, for most of his career, has been like a good power hitter, but not this Ruthian power hitter that people give him credit for. So I don't think he's bad, but I do think he's overrated. I think people give him more credit than he deserves for what he's done so far.
Yeah, and he struck out nearly a 35% clip versus righties last year. So
yeah,
we kind of power or bust. I mean, it's a fine lineup. It's not like at the top of the board for me, but if you're just trying to get like as a mini stack in addition to your main stack, I think it's fine.
Yeah, and I do like the ability to differentiate, especially on DraftKings with some of the ownership projections we've got in the back end. I mean, even Voit, a usually pretty popular hitter, is under 10% owned on DK in our projections. Hosmer immediately drops to 4.2. Jurickson Profar is, I know, a guy who's never really gotten it done. He had 120 home run season, but he does have a power and speed profile. So he could play interestingly for fantasy, and he's getting the starts in left field for this team. So I think Profar is interesting there. Will Myers even, is fairly cheap. CJ Abrams is fairly low on. So there's some targets for differentiation at the back end of that lineup too, that you can get to, maybe you're reaching down from the middle to the 7 hit or something like that when you're building a pod stack. Any love for the D-backs side of this one? You go into anything with like Dalton Varsho, Ketel Marte, Christian Walker at the top of the lineup, or are they just kind of off the board for you?
Yeah, outside of Varsho, because it's always appealing having a catcher eligible, especially for on DraftKings leading off. I mean, because usually you're getting those guys in the bottom half of the order, so that's always going to be appealing. But when you're going to be so deep on Joe Musgrove like I am, it's just pretty much an avoid spot for me to be outside of a Dalton Varsho one-off in my non-Musgrove lineups.
And is it something where if we've got an overwhelming amount of Musgrove in our lineups, is it something where you're going to be looking to, you want to have at least, a handful, say you build 150 lineups, 30-40% of them have Musgrove. Do you try and specifically have a handful of lineups that do have the D-back stack that don't have Musgrove in them? Or is it something where you're as you're building lineups, and if you notice that Musgrove's not in it, do you kind of then say, maybe I do want to put the Diamondbacks into this? Like, do you go through the thought process that way at all? Or is it just based on, how they profile out and you're not necessarily attacking it from that kind of a perspective?
I think early on in the season, that makes sense too, because it's kind of hard to predict what's going to happen at the very beginning of the season, because these guys can be way off, way on, and pitch counts are always a bit of a concern. For me right now, I'm just looking at my dry run and my stacks. I'm getting some Diamondbacks, but we're talking less than 5% exposure to them. I just rather be higher on the guys that I like the Mets, like the Atlanta Braves and the Dodgers. So yeah, not getting too much Diamondbacks in. Yeah, I know Joe Musgrove's going to be pretty high owned, so there's a leverage spot here, but I think they're low owned for a reason.
Yeah, and that's the thing, when we do love to attack leverage, but you kind of want to do it with somewhat capable bats. And as you pointed out a minute ago, they haven't gotten a hit off of a starting pitcher. Gunn points out that it's also the anniversary of Musgrove's no-hitter. So no-hitter anniversary plus a team that doesn't hit starters. That's a narrative street for you. But yeah, looking at this team on the team stats board using last year's numbers for this year's active roster, 29th with a 144 ISO against righties, 21st with a 23.8% strikeout rate, 28th out of 30 teams, 14% below average creating runs, 30th out of 30 teams with a 2.2% home run rate. Just not a good lineup. So yeah, I think I am firmly on the Musgrove side. And even if I'm looking to be contrarian against Musgrove ownership, I don't know that I'm going to this stack at all, really. Maybe 1-2 shares. Anything else to hit on from this one? We're going to jump into the Hall of Fame real quick here in a sec.
No, for me, I'm just really looking to attack Diamondbacks with Joe Musgrove tonight. Hopefully I've made that clear by now, but he's certainly my favorite pitcher.
Yeah, I think we definitely have. We had Andrew Martinez before we go to the Hall of Fame. Andrew Martinez in chat asked, Terry, are you okay with doing a Swanson, Ozuna, and Duvall stack on FanDuel and keeping out the higher priced Braves? I'm absolutely fine with those 3 bats. I think you're totally fine there. You can get away from some ownership. I like the prices on those bats. Ton of power. Yeah, totally fine with that one. So fire away. Jumping into the Hall of Fame, you guys probably heard about it by now, but if you haven't, if you finish in the top 3 of a contest with more than 5,000 entries in it on either DraftKings or FanDuel, and you have our logo as your avatar, you can win a free month of Awesemo Hall of Fame. And we've got people cleaning up on this all the time. All you have to do is finish in the top 3 in that qualifying contest and then tweet us a screenshot of your win, or a screenshot if you want to be a Barbara Walters about it. Tweet us the screenshot of your win to at Awesemo Hall of Fame, at Awesemo HOF, and you can get your name shouted out on a show like we're about to do here. You win the free month. So we're going to go through some of these big wins that we've had recently. We have, let's see here, Fields, our guy Fields from the chat, won himself $6,300. Not too bad, Fields. NBA shot. That'll keep you going for quite a while. Congratulations to Fields. We've got Ryan Houston 7. Can I get that free month yet, please? So thick. That's a weird thing to put in there, but Ryan won himself some $600. Definitely like to see that. And this is what we love to see. You know, a lot of people winning with the tools and content. Sometimes it's thousands, sometimes it's hundreds. It's all important. Sometimes it's life-changing money. Love seeing this. Moving on to D. Fick. Thanks, Jazzraz and DFS Golfer, for the critically important content and tools from the Awesemo DFS and Awesemo.com. Took down a $600 PGA win there. Not too bad there. We've got Steve Schobert, took down something $6K, another $6,000 winner in the basketball streets. Love to see that. Congratulations to Steve. And finally, our guy who just lives in these Hall of Fame things and lives in my tweet notifications because he's always winning with our tools, with our content on the betting side, on the DFS side, our pal Dave DeRemmer. Imagine betting on Kansas, then imagine live betting on Kansas down 15. Not a bad takedown for Dave. So congratulations to all the Hall of Fame folks. If you want to get in the Hall of Fame, tweet at Awesemo HOF with your qualifying win and we'll get you in there. Love to see that. Gunn in the chat says after this show, Terry will be hunting wabbits. Yeah, that's after this show, Terry will be traveling up to the Bronx to see the Yankees. So let's move on. We've got one game left, 10 minutes to go through it. Plenty of time. If you guys have any questions, we'll try and wrap up questions in the back end. We've got Emac and Gunn coming up right after this for live before lock for the afternoon slate. So we'll have tons of content there. But any questions about anything that pops into your head for the last 10 minutes, drop it into the chat. Chris, we're jumping into the Astros versus the Angels. We have 2 pitchers on the mound that I have no idea what to make of right now. Justin Verlander hasn't pitched in like 2 years. Noah Syndergaard has barely pitched in like 2 years. What do we make of these former like apex starters? I mean, Verlander higher apex than Syndergaard, but Syndergaard certainly loaded with talent a couple years ago. What do we make of these guys at this point? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I got the same thing in my notes where we haven't seen Verlander in about 2 years. Since 2019, and Noah Syndergaard, he's pitched like 2 innings since 2019. So it's definitely kind of a guessing game here. I was looking into what they've done in spring training so far. Verlander was at 13.2 innings, had 15 strikeouts with the, hate to use the ERA stat, but 1.32 ERA. And he got to 77 pitches in his last start. So I think that's at least somewhat positive news for Justin Verlander. I know he's grading out pretty well on the top pitchers tool, and he is part of that 3-pitcher pool that I have tonight where I could potentially get 2 in cash games and I'm building around him. It's pretty much just him, Musgrove, and escaped my mind.
Bassett.
Oh yeah, Bassett. Going around those 3 tonight. But yeah, I can get behind Verlander. The matchup's pretty tough though. We know the Angels are a pretty loaded lineup. Shohei Ohtani, Mike Trout, Anthony Rendon, Jared Walsh. Does drop off a little bit, but definitely not a great spot. But if you're just kind of betting on talent, I mean, last time we saw Verlander, very long time ago, and that's before surgery, but they have a 35% K rate in 2019 with a 3.18 xFIP. Obviously, I don't think you can expect those kind of numbers to return, especially early on. But I mean, since there's not that many great pitchers, I can get behind some Verlander tonight.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to as well. My model loves him because it's using the old numbers, right? The model doesn't know that he's been out for 2 years and he's been hurt. It's the same with Thor on the other side. So Thor doesn't project nearly as well for me though as Verlander is here. So I think I'm going to be on the Verlander side of things. Are you going to have any pieces of Syndergaard going up against this ridiculously talented Astros lineup?
Yeah, so I took advantage of the Astros last night. Obviously, I'd say it's a better starting pitcher tonight, but looking at my stacks right now, or not my stacks, I'm sorry, my pitchers breakdown. So obviously a ton of Musgrove, a ton of Verlander. On FanDuel, I was getting single digits on Syndergaard, and I feel pretty good about that. I just don't really want to chase Syndergaard versus a star-studded lineup like the Houston Astros, where there's just so much power there. So for me personally, just strongly on the Verlander side, Noah Syndergaard, maybe take a wait and see approach and see how he looks early on in the season.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. And you're talking about an Astros team that is just such a good hitting ball club. You mentioned the power. I want to focus real quick also on the strikeout rate. For this year's active roster, last year's stats, 20.7% strikeout rate against right-handed pitching, third best in baseball, and a number of guys in that lineup that are in like the mid to low teens. It's just a really, really talented lineup in terms of power, in terms of the hit tool. I just don't like to tangle with these guys, even without a Yuli Gurriel in the middle of the lineup. Like they're just loaded from top to bottom. So I don't want to throw many shares of Thor here, especially not at 9,100 on the FanDuel slate. 8,600 is a little bit better on DK and only 6% ownership. Maybe you get away with a few shares over there. Where I'm only rostering one pitcher, I don't really want to be in the Syndergaard business here. I'll begrudgingly have the Verlander shares just because I don't know where else I can go and how he is projecting out. And I do think there's more meat on the bone for him against this Angels lineup. Heavy strikeout lineup. If you look down just last year's just overall strikeout rates, the top 8 hitters have an average strikeout rate against both hands of 27.5% from last year. That is an inflated strikeout rate. That includes a 16.5% on Anthony Rendon, which is actually not bad. It leaves out the 9% at the bottom of the lineup on David Fletcher, slap hitter who doesn't strike out all that much. But there are 8 hitters or 7 hitters in that lineup that have pretty inflated strikeout rates. There's some good talent, like you mentioned, at the top end of it, but I think we get through there pretty cleanly with Verlander if he's on his game, if he's 85% of the Verlander that he once was. So I'm going to be going that way. Are you getting to any Angels stacks though with, maybe the idea of he's not the Verlander he once was, maybe with the idea of a short leash, get into the bullpen? They're a pretty good bullpen, but is that leading you to any Angel stacks, any top of the lineup Angel stacks here?
Yeah, single digit exposure, but I definitely want some Angels. I mean, it's just as good as just how good the top half of the order is. I think you have to have some. Like going into a slate, if you're doing 150 builds without any Shohei Ohtani or Mike Trout, is pretty scary, especially if Justin Verlander just isn't on top of his game coming off the surgery. So I'm definitely getting to some. Obviously, not a priority for me by any means, and only a tournament target. But yeah, I'll get to it just a little bit to try to fight that ownership.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And it looks to me like people are sleeping on Anthony Rendon and Jared Walsh in those stacks. You're seeing Ohtani and Trout both owned over 10% on both sites. And then Rendon on DK, 4.6% at 4,100. That's too low. You guys need to roster some Rendon. 3,200, 8.5% on FanDuel, same story. And then Jared Walsh, a very good hitter. 585 plate appearances, 277, 345, 09 for Walsh with 29 home runs, a 232 ISO created, runs 27% better than average. Cleaning up for this team, under 5,000 on DK, 3,300 on FanDuel, and he's pulling less than 5% ownership. Get some Jared Walsh and some Anthony Rendon into your Angel stacks if you guys are building them out there, because they're getting left on the table too much. Back end of the lineup, I don't really need to tangle with here. So if I'm going Angels, I'm just going to the top end. As far as Astros stacks, you mentioned you were on them last night. Are you going right back to the well with some Astros bats here against Thor?
Yeah, definitely would rather get on the Astros than the Angels bats in this game. They did treat me well last night. I mean, Diaz went deep. I believe Cal Tucker went double donger, if I remember correctly. Jeremy Pena went deep. Alex Bregman went deep. Jose Altuve, I believe, went deep off the rip to start the game. And while they might not go as ballistic as they did last night, I still think attacking Noah Syndergaard is probably not going to be what we saw in previous seasons way back when. And love the price point of Michael Brantley. I mean, and you're going to see me talk about Michael Brantley pretty much every single slate that I can. He's my favorite player in baseball. Loved him ever since he was on the Indians or Guardians, whatever you want to call them now. And he's always cheap. I mean, 2,900 on FanDuel, 4,000 on DK, just a very easy fit. The guy does not strike out. Last year versus righties, only a 9% K rate. Not a big power hitter, but a 150 ISO versus righties is respectable for a guy that's mainly a contact hitter. I mean, talking about a 370 batting average versus them last year. So yeah, definitely just love all the Astros. And even the bottom half of the order is playable. They're not just a top heavy lineup. Bottom half, Jeremy Pena is still dirt cheap. Diaz is cheap, and you can play him like 3 different positions over on FanDuel, which makes it pretty flexible.
Yeah, you got to love that 3 position eligibility, and it helps you create unique lineups too when you've got those guys that you can move around. So, okay, if I play him at third base instead of second, or I play him at short instead of third, I can get to this combination of different hitters and this combination of guys from another stack. When you've got a guy like that at min price too on the FanDuel slate, that just makes a hell of a lot of stuff work. So I don't mind going to that at all. On Aledmys Diaz, he's a 259, 317, 405 last season, 8 home runs. Not the greatest hitter in the world, but you get so much utility out of that price and out of that flexibility. And then a guy I mentioned typically when we talk about this team, Chas McCormick, always cheap, always incredibly low low owned, 10.2% barrel ball rate, 48.7% hard hit rate last season, hit 14 home runs with a 190 ISO in 320 plate appearances. Another guy we don't necessarily want to leave out of stacks. He's not a superstar like the top end of this lineup by any means, but get some Chad McCormick into some Astros stacks. If you're building 25, 30 Astros stacks, you want to have some McCormick in there. And then Jordan Alvarez, Kyle Tucker. I love both of those hitters from the left side of the plate going up against Thor here, getting monster home run numbers on the Astros today. So my home run model loves them. I think I'm going to be rostering a lot of Astros stacks. They're all under 5% owned too on the FanDuel slate, which is just completely bonkers. So I'll be going there. Anything to wrap us up? We're hitting right at the end of the show here. Any final thoughts? You got a home run call, anything like that for the slate?
Oh boy, home run call. Give me one of the Mets guys. I'm going to take Brandon Nimmo leadoff dong tonight.
All right. I like that. That's an interesting one. Everybody who wants my home run call can check out my article a little bit later on the site, because I haven't decided yet. And I got to think about that one. Jordan Alvarez or Chris Bryant? We'll go out on this one. Jordan Alvarez or Chris Bryant on FanDuel?
Ooh, for me, it's going to be Jordan Alvarez. It's like that left and righty spot.
I like it. I like it. Stick around, guys. We've got MLB Live Before Lock coming up right now with Gundacker and EMAC. Later on, we've got MMA Live Before Lock. We've got NBA Deeper Dive at 4 o'clock. The MMA is at 3 o'clock. NBA 4 o'clock. NBA 5 o'clock. And then you're back for NASCAR from 6:30 to 7:30. So we've got a loaded day of sports. All kinds of stuff coming up, guys. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'm Terry. That was Chris. We're out of here. We appreciate it.
Sounds good. Yeah, and then Roby last night, I had him in like every single prize picks. I was just like, are you kidding?
His fouls were nuts.
Well, then the fouls, and then he tweaked his ankle, and then they were just like, yeah, why are you even playing? And I'm sitting there going, tonight's the time you're going to just give him 14 minutes, really? They played one person off the bench. All right, Awesemo, here we go. It's your old pal Emac coming to you on a Saturday morning, back with the one and only Gundacker. We're talking a little Major League Baseball here. My first baseball show. You've got a couple under your belt, Gun. What do we like here on a fine Saturday?
Here, yeah, baseball is we've got the express lane of experience through the first couple slates, a couple rain delays, a couple postponements, a couple pitchers getting hurt while throwing, gems, back-to-back no-hitters getting ruined by Tim Hill. Yeah, those of you that are trying to transition from NBA, embrace the variance long-term. You'll learn. But I am glad that they are understanding some of the nuances that we have to become experts at.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a challenge today. The resounding refrain is going to be weather. So the blanket statement, it's 50 degrees or below everywhere except the West Coast. And on our early slate, Tampa Bay has the warmest temperatures, not outside, but because they're inside. Tropicana Field is covered. It's going to be 72. And I used to say when I'd sit in the Kingdom, it's always 72 and partly hazy, right? Because it had that gray ceiling. And in Seattle,
okay.
It's about the same. So a little old school joke there, But we've got a lot of fun here planned for you guys. We are going to take you up to lock. We're going to go through the early games first, then we'll go through the 4:00 games. There's that Texas-Toronto game that's just sort of floating out there, not on every slate. But if you are playing the all-day slates on Yahoo and FanDuel, it will be there. So we'll hit on that. Not a lot of information really about the salaries because it's far too disparate to worry about that, but we'll cover who's in that game. We will go game by game here. You guys got the main slate that was done by Terry and Chris just prior to us. So if you are looking for that late night information or that main slate information, this is going to be the last MLB show today. We are going to have the deeper dive and the live before lock for NBA 3-game slate tipping off at 6 or 6:30. I'll double check that. But we also, after us, have MMA live before lock, and we also have today NASCAR first night race in Richmond. So there is a lot of big tournaments out there for that, and then MMA locks at 6. So a little bit of a choppy schedule. Oh yeah, and the Masters is going on as well with 4 different MLB slates. So there's something for everyone today, and we also have 8 videos on demand that will be coming out. So we've got you covered. This channel is going to be humming for the next, basically till bedtime. But we're going to jump on in here. We want to give a hat tip out here to Odd Shopper. They are sponsoring our show. We'll talk about them as we get into some stuff here. But reminder, we always do appreciate those likes, as well as anybody who subscribes. We crossed over 75,000 subscribers. That is an amazing milestone. We appreciate that a lot. And I know I didn't put it on the sidebar, Gun, but we'll, after each of our 2 slates here, the morning and the afternoon slate, we'll let you take the bomb detector out for a spin here and see what's going on with that. So starting off here with our first game of the day, we've got Chicago at Detroit. This is going to be Dylan Cease taking on who is it? Casey Miz. And this one is an intriguing game here. Last year, Cease had 31% strikeout rate against both righties and lefties. He is going to play a prominent role in our lineup builds. You also have an amazing White Sox offense. Miz is a pretty good pitcher here. However, it's kind of a neutral play when you're going against such a fierce offense. What do you want to do for this game today, Gun?
Yeah, you mentioned the White Sox offense. I mean, they are pretty stacked, and they're even, somewhat limping. They got Moncada on the IL. They're going to lose AJ Pollock to paternity leave in a little bit, and I don't think that's going to impede me from stacking them at all. Just about any slate that they're on, especially against Casey Mize, who certainly has some struggles in his first couple seasons in the league, and that Tigers bullpen that I'm not running from. So I will be stacking the White Sox as one of my kind of favorite 4 or 5 stacks. It's more of a bet on talent against average to less than average pitching. You mentioned weather, throughout the slate. It's not great, and the elements in this one are bad enough to where Dylan Cease is only about half a run favored, minus 137. And you would probably expect the White Sox to be much larger favorites against a team like the Tigers on a general day, but maybe that's a boost to weather. Maybe there's some extra confidence installed on Casey Mize's evolution as a pitcher. I don't have that confidence just yet, but maybe he'll surprise me here. I'm definitely stacking the White Sox. Dylan Cease was great last year. He did continue a little bit of a bugaboo against lefties in terms of surrendering homers. Not a ton of Tigers here that I'm running from the left side of the batter's box, but they did just pick up Austin Meadows. He does have some power, 274 ISO against righties the last 2 years with almost a 900 OPS. So I do think that if anybody we're going to get Cease early, I think Austin Meadows might be somebody to look out for. But yeah, give me the White Sox stack.
All right. I see I'm getting a little guff in chat, as I should. I can never remember if it's Mize or Miz. And then I start thinking of Larry, the Larry Mize or the Miz, the old baseball player. And then there's the kid who wasn't he a wrestler or something to do with
still
MTV?
is, yeah.
Yeah. It all gets jumbled here. The way my brain stores information, far from pretty. Andrew Kashner and Chase Anderson, those names get jumbled in my mind. It's just how my mind stores information. Never get old, kids. Never get old. From that standpoint. So I'm going to drop my free articles already posted today. This is Spotlight Hitters and Top Stacks. We've got in front of the paywall. This is going to be coming to you every single day. We have Major League Baseball. Terry's tournament strategy and home run calls articles usually comes out a little bit later because he writes about 5 times as many words as I do, and mine is not a short article. But you can check out recommended plays for or stacks for each of the slates. So I'm not always going to write up the best stack there, but if I'm talking about a like Coors Field, you don't need me to tell you to play people at Coors Field, but I will talk about how you can find a secondary stack or how you could utilize today on the main slate the Philadelphia Phillies if you're looking at their vaunted power up front, or if you want to go to the bottom third of their lineup for a contrarian stack. This is something that's going to kind of teach you something throughout the season. There's little nuggets hidden here and there that will help you carry forward, because by the time we get into about slate 10 or 15, guess what, Gundacker? There either is going to be a lefty on the mound or a righty on the mound. It is going to be a good hitter environment or a not great hitting environment. Those are going to be our variables, right? So we like to spice things up just a little bit, but go ahead and check that out there. But I do have no surprise. Dylan Cease probably my favorite option of the early slate, just for his body of work last year. He's starting to put things together, and having that offense behind him makes him look very, very solid. Anything else you want to discuss from this game?
No, I'm in agreement with you. Dylan Cease will be one of my more sought after pitching targets. You mentioned the bond detector earlier. Little preview here. Yasmani Grandal has my highest rating on the slate for home run probability.
Excellent. We do like to see that. So Gundacker's going to give you a little peek at his bomb detector. That's his proprietary special tool. But today on the Awesemo channel, we have some free premium content. You can get the NBA ownership rankings, the MLB player rankings, the NHL player rankings, as well as the UFC pro plays. So those are all free content that is today. And then if you want to get in behind the paywall here for free, you can utilize the Awesemo podcast giveaway. All you got to do is leave a 5-star rating and review with your Twitter handle or Awesemo username on whichever podcast platform is your favorite, and you will be entered into a drawing to win 1 free month of Awesemo Platinum contact. Gun, I'm going to let you take over this next game because my dog's going nuts.
All right, Orioles at the Rays here. Jordan Lyles on the bump for the Orioles. Drew Rasmussen on the bump for the Rays. Rays actually coming to the slate with one of the highest run totals of 5.2. Orioles, not so much, 3.5. Rays minus 231 favorites. Rasmussen last season, 25.5% K rate to lefties, just about a 25% K rate to righties. XFIP was solid, could have been better to righties. So what we're going to watch out for Rasmussen here, he did add a sweeping slider to his pitch arsenal. We haven't seen it in regular season. We did get a peek at it in spring training, and we saw some strikeouts. So I am going to be looking for that pitch today. We've seen a couple pitchers, and it's one of the nuances of a new season. Some pitchers add to their repertoire. We saw John Gray add a new slider to his repertoire, and he was pretty successful with it against the Blue Jays until a blister developed. So I do kind of like the thought of Rasmussen becoming even better and building on top of what was already a pretty solid season for him last year. So I will be rostering him probably more so on DraftKings this morning at 7K. I don't really have a high standard at that price point. You give me 14, 15 fantasy points, I'll go from there. I don't have a lot of fear in this Orioles lineup. The strikeout rates are above average. There's a couple of guys he's got to get through, Cedric Mullins, Anthony Santander, guys like that. But there's plenty of strikeouts to be had here, and that sizable chance to walk away with the win is nice as well for our price picks and FanDuel exposure. So I do like Rasmussen, and I definitely like this Rays stack. Jordan Lyles coming into this Orioles team backed by a below average bullpen, to say the least. He allows a 1.87 home run per nine to lefties, over 2 to righties, surrenders a ton of power. It's been that way for as long as we have sample on him, and that's going to make all of the Rays look pretty good in not only power ratings, but just generally speaking, great matchup. The Rays are loading out a ton of switchies and lefties, and in this case, I have just Randy Arozarena as the only guy that will be in the right batter's box against Jordan Lyles. So we can really key in on Lyles' poor splits to lefties, which last year, a 16% K rate, a 267 average, 187 home run per nine, 46% fly ball rate, 38.5% hard contact rate. That is what you want. So Rays are going to be one of my top stacks easily on this slate.
All right, 187, they're murdering the ball.
Hey, you said it, not me.
All right. How many games last year did Jordan Lyles, who led the league with 38 home runs, how many times last year did he allow at least 4 home runs?
I'm gonna say 5.
3.
Okay.
There were 2 other games where he allowed 3 home runs for 8 total multi-home run games. Now, how many games did he allow 3 or less runs out of 32 appearances?
Runs or home runs?
Runs.
I'm going to say 0.
21.
Okay. Is this like we got past the 3rd inning, or is this split?
Yeah, it's he gives up a ton of power, but they're generally not people on base. He's kind of like a poor man's homeless man's Max Scherzer. He gives up power equally, essentially, to both sides of the plate, but that's really all it does. So he's one of those pitchers that I just want to point out that as long as the bases are relatively clean, the damage doesn't add up quite as often as one would expect. And that's just something that's important to remember, because we think of these guys, oh, they're bad pitchers. And they're like, well, yes, but also no, it's the Wade Miley effect, right? It's just somehow they survive sometimes, or Jay Happ, et cetera, et cetera. So I definitely do want to target against him, but this is just a reminder. It's not like he is bringing Coors Field with him, of course, having called that home once upon a time. Anything else from this game?
No, people are asking if the Rays are projected to be the highest owned stack right now. No. And I mean, we got a surprising name at the top of the top stack list. So we're not getting positive leverage on the Rays stack, but we are it's going to be hard to find positive leverage on a small slate anyway. But just for like run total and matchup, they're definitely tied for my highest owned stack. I got 3 stacks that I'm going to split down the middle. So give me all the Rays.
Okay, let's continue moving along. We've got Seattle at Minnesota here. This one is going to be somewhat interesting. We've got a little bit of turnover on both teams, so it's kind of a new look, shall we say here. Let me call up their lineups because I had the main slate going there. So new for the Mariners this season, we've got Adam Frazier and Jesse Winker coming in. Reminder that they brought in Abraham Toro at the end of last season. They've also got their rookie wonder superstar Julio Rodriguez is in the mix. On the Twins side of things, it's just kind of their usual collection of people. No more Mitch Garver. He is in Texas, but a lot of familiar names, and most everybody is healthy at the moment for Minnesota. They seemingly are usually bitten by the injury bug relatively early. You've got Sonny Gray taking the mound for the Twins. He was respectable last year, I think is a good category to put him in. This is the 11th season for Sonny Gray. The current Mariners have 7 total career at-bats against him. I think Frazier had 11. I know Eugenio Suarez, who's not in the lineup, had 3, and I'm going to guess it was probably Winker or Haniger had 3 as well. So the Mariners really haven't seen him. That doesn't always mean a lot, but it's different than having a great deal of familiarity with the pitcher. So that, between the temperatures being 40 in the mid 40s and just general miserably cold in Minnesota today, could make this a bit of a suppressed offensive environment. What do you like here? Lead through either's, because I think we should talk a little bit about Sonny Gray and then even Logan Gilbert, a Mariners young Mariners arm who hasn't put it all together yet, but has shown signs of being at least an above average pitcher.
Yeah, Sonny Gray's coming in right now as one of my top 2-3 owned pitchers, closer to 3 right now. I might talk myself into boosting Rasmussen up a little bit more just because he's a lot cheaper on DK, open up about $2K salary. But I like Sonny Gray quite a bit. New look stadium. He has certainly been a elite level pitcher when he's at his best. 31% K rate last year to lefties, 1-4 to righties last year. The season prior, 35%. Coming out of Great American Ballpark into Target Field, and right now with this weather being as poor as it is, it's going to play to the pitcher side. So I do like his upside here. And no offense, Emac, I don't. I'm not too scared of the Mariners, even with some of their new additions. With that said, Crawford, Toro, with Jesse Winker, Ty France, Adam Frazier against righties, it's not like they project as hack-happy, big strikeout guys. So it could be a little bit of a pesky matchup. And, the other night, Yu Darvish was, throwing 6 no-hit innings against the D-backs, but he only had like 3 strikeouts. So it wasn't like he was going off for fantasy. So it could be one of those situations. The pushback here is he probably will get Haniger and Kelnick and Murphy once or twice, and Haniger can trade a strikeout for a bomb. And that has been Sonny Gray's one downside, at least last year. Gave up some homers to righties. But his upside and his floor is probably too good to pass up. So you got to have some exposure to Gray here. The elements are in his favor. Right now, I had him 3 in ownership, in my exposure ownership.
Right. That seems mostly reasonable here for this game. I think this is kind of a filler game for me with regards to not in a bad way, but each of these teams is probably going to be deeper down my stack list, but I have no issue stacking them. I do like the pitching a little bit better than average. I'm only playing on DraftKings today just because it's for the 2 pitcher site. Tonight I'll probably play a little bit on Yahoo, but that, of course, the main slate that was already covered previously at the beginning of the show by Terry and Chris. That also the 2 pitcher site. I haven't, because we have so many other sports going on right now, I haven't dabbled into heading over to Yahoo just yet. FanDuel. I don't think either of these pitchers even comes close to making the cut for me on FanDuel. Usually on FanDuel, I like to take whatever the top 1 or 2 pitchers are, because the rest of their pricing is so loose. You can just do essentially anything else that you need to do. And I think we'll talk about Woodruff, but he seems to be the guy that probably would anchor the staff there for me. So the lens I'm looking at today is always kind of keeping an eye on who is that second pitcher I'm going to be using and what type of stack is it going to cost me. There are enough discount dandies across the different teams here that we should not have too many issues looking for salary cap flexibility. There are quite a few $7 and $8 players on Yahoo that are seeing the lineup on all of the slates. So that is a quick way to really allow yourself to upgrade to whatever stack you're looking at, or double secure your pitching over there on Yahoo. So just a quick little live before lock / strategy talk as we all dust off the cobwebs for I know we get a lot of people that only really get to play on Saturdays and Sundays. So just a reminder for those of you that are catching back up and trying to remember what's going on here with baseball. We only have another 197 days of MLB regular season ahead of us. So yay, here we go. Moving on to our next game. Apparently I need to pick a new transition phrase because I think I've used that for every game. I'm gonna find something else here for us heading forward. We've got Pittsburgh at St. Louis. You've got Keller going against Mikolas here. I think based upon what I read in some of the spring training reports, I think Mikolas is going to be one of the more stretched out options here. I figure we'll see him for 90-95 pitches today. I think that is somewhat notable. The Pittsburgh Steelers, boy, I'm just having myself a day. The Pittsburgh Pirates, shall we call them the Bucks? They have traded away everything not nailed down, Gundacker, except for Cabrian Hayes, who then got himself dinged up right after inking a contract, or about to ink a major contract extension here. He should be okay, but he's dealing with a bit of a sore wrist. This is just a disaster of a team here in Pittsburgh. I'm going to be liking pitchers against them for most of the season. I do like Mikolas today. Did you know he's like 33 or 34? He's been around he kind of got a late start, but he's been around for a long time now.
Yeah. I didn't know that was his age, but he's a pretty entertaining character. I've watched him open some baseball cards before.
The mustache always gets me. What is appealing to you here on the field?
So, I mean, when I opened up the slate and I looked at our top stacks tool, I was kind of surprised that they have we've given him the top chance of being the top stack on the slate. And they also have the second highest ownership on the slate as a stack with a 46% chance of being a top value. And all those numbers kind of blow me away, but especially the number 2 in ownership, because they're not good and they're implied for like the lowest runs on the slate. So if, that's a way to get different is to fade the lowest run team on the slate, then I might just have to full send that. I do like the thought of Vogelbach and Brian Reynolds and guys like that, but if they are going to come in at that type of ownership, I might just look the other way. Mikolas, not a strikeout guy, but like you said, pitch counts up there. He's just here to eat innings, and he might accidentally get some strikeouts like Wainwright did the other day, because the Pirates are loaded with strikeouts. Only one of their hitters in this lineup have sustained a below 20% K rate against righties the last 2 years, and only one has sustained a below 24% K rate against righties the last 2 years, and that's Brian Reynolds. With that said, if you're going to be a contact pitcher, you're going to dare a guy like Vogelbach to make contact. I'm going to have some exposures to those guys. But at 7,300, if Mikolas is going to be stretched out, we can get a shot at 6-7 innings, and he might, like I said, accidentally get some strikeouts. I think I'm going to play a little bit of Mikolas and maybe get double the leverage against the field if they're going to be this heavy on the Pirates. It's just a weird spot for that to pick up ownership. Mitch Keller.
I think one of the things, especially on DK, that's really driving the ownership towards the Pirates is Josh Van Meter coming in at 2,000 even, and he's second and third base eligible, batting fifth. So the optimizers are going to like him, and then Ben Gamel's 2.5. So I think those guys are really driving it.
Yeah,
but they only have a 3.6 implied run total.
Yeah,
I mean, Josh Van Meter batting fifth, Yoshi Satsugo batting cleanup. Really? Ben Gamel, Dan Vogelbach, these are like cast off Mariners / cast off Brewers. Now they're landing in Pittsburgh. So it doesn't seem to be too daunting of a lineup.
Yeah. On the other side, the Cardinals, I think, even in spots where they don't project like they're in an incredible spot. And Mitch Keller, he'll allow some contact and an elevated batting average. Last year, he did allow 1.5 homer per night to righties. So that's enough for me to take shares on the Cardinals right now. I personally have 15% of my lineups are Cardinal stacks. In looking at our top stack tool, we have the Cardinals with a 4.5% chance of being the top stack, mirrors the ownership. So I do get I'm about over three times the field on that, just because I do think there's a lot of talent baked into this Cardinals lineup, a lot of power. Tyler O'Neill is huge, and Tyler O'Neill last year, almost a 17% barrel rate when he made contact. He's already got one on the season. He just has a whole lot of power. We saw Goldie steal a base the other day. Arenado is a high grade hitter. So I think this Cardinals team is just too talented to not get some shares of. And they are implied, for 4.5, which is pretty run of the mill today. And there's a little bit of a boost with the wind blowing to right field. So maybe a guy like Dylan Carlson or Tommy Edman, who Edman might be the most overpriced 9-hole hitter on the entire slate today. But hey, he got him a late inning homer the other night, so maybe it'll pay off if you want to be ultra contrarian.
Is it just kind of like a law that St. Louis has to be almost entirely righty from their on offense every single season?
Every year. And then every time they get like an average lefty coming in, like a Lester or something like that, I full send a stack, and it like almost never works for me.
Corey Dickerson, I wondered where he was. Well, he's batting fifth today for the Cardinals, and then they have the leadoff and the Mr. Irrelevant, as you mentioned there, Tommy Edman, but Dylan Carlson are their two switch hitters. So yikes. That there will be some pitchers, especially in the NL Central, that we will start to target, especially right-handed pitchers going against this team if they don't do much to get additional lefties in their lineup. All right, one more game here on the early slate. We will transition with that Texas-Toronto game, and then we'll take you to the afternoon contests. We have a couple of intriguing pitchers here. You've got Brandon Woodruff, who had a phenomenal year last season. He was amongst many of the Brewers pitchers that were leading the league, or in the league leaders with strikeout rate, with ERA, et cetera, ultimately falling to teammate Corbin Burns, who won the Cy Young. But you've got a nice matchup here for Woodruff. Justin Steele on the other side, a little bit intriguing there at 6,100 on DraftKings. He is allowing a lot of different lineup builds. Like you can get a nice pairing with him and Drew Rasmussen, and then do a 4-4 stack, basically with the heart of the order for Minnesota and Chicago. I'm seeing that coming up a bunch in my crunches here, et cetera. So I think there's some nice moving parts here. How are you feeling about Woodruff? Where does he rank for you against Cease?
Yeah, he's neck and neck with Dylan Cease. I think matchup considered and strikeout stuff considered, I mean, he's at the top. The matchup though, and the Cubs are one of those teams where they're not overly menacing. We're not running from some of these guys, but some scrappy K rates coming back, like Nick Madrigal. No power in his bat. It's kind of like David Fletcher, hits for a good average, but almost never strikes out. So you might, you're hoping that he gets a 1 or 2 pitch ground out or something like that. Wilson Contreras, Ian Happ definitely can strike out with the best of them. Patrick Wisdom as well. Wisdom, a much more extreme Tyler O'Neill, where he'll strike out 40% of the time, but if he makes contact, it's probably not staying in the park. Guys like Frank Schwindel, Jason Hayward, Nico Horner, who homered on opening day, also low K rate. So maybe a little bit more pesky than you want him, but when Woodruff is at his best, he is definitely one of the top 10, top 5 pitchers in the NL. And sometimes great pitchers will just mow down good hitters or even average hitters, even if their strikeout levels are below league average. And I just think I'm banking on the stuff here. And this is a plus pitching environment. So it's just another boost for Woodruff. So I don't know if I'm going to end up with more of him or Cease yet right now. I kind of put the same ceiling on him and just let the opto choose. I think I'm going to get better strikeout marks from the Tigers for upside. I do have a little bit more respect for the Tigers offense than I do for the Cubs. So it just kind of evens out in the wash. So right now, almost a dead even heat between the two pre-flop. I don't know about post-flop, but they will likely be, Woodruff will be one of my top 2 to top 3 highest owned pitchers.
All right. With Justin Steele, so he did pitch about 60 innings last year. Was solid, just over a strikeout per inning. Most projection systems have him somewhere for high 8s, not quite one full strikeout per inning. So that's good to see. Again, the $6,100 is nice. He's one of those the pitchers that kind of got their development curve curtailed somewhat because of that pandemic season when they just had their alternate training site in that pandemic shortened year 2 seasons ago, because he didn't, and he was going from AA to AAA at that stretch, and those were the players that tended to be hurt the most, or just kind of suppressed the most. So he's someone that I think is worthy of looking at tonight, or this afternoon, when we're looking towards some of the hitters going against him. And I wanted to, did I close? Damn it, I closed that tab. Let me open that again. So the one interesting one that I was curious about was Hunter Renfroe. He just has the light tower power against lefties. Andrew McCutchen, a career lefty masher. Keston Hiura, 2,100 on DK. I'll roll the dice with that. He is one of those guys that's kind of been splits neutral or a little bit better on the power side against righties. Just funny what we remember. Just going off memory here. Colton Wong is adequate, but Christian Yelich. The Christian Yelich and the Cody Bellinger former NL MVPs just collapsing last year for no apparent reason. It seemed like Yelich had a negative launch angle for parts of the season. Do you think he kind of shakes it off? Did he just need to clear his head, the old proverbial time away from the game or whatever? What are you thinking here about the Brewers? Because if they are connecting, they've got power and on-base skill sets, even though they're not the flashiest names on that offense.
Yeah, Yelich didn't do a whole lot in spring training to kind of shake his launch ankle woes. In 30 at bats in spring training, he had a 2.75 ground out to air out ratio. Not what you want. He's making contact with it. That's more than what Cody Bellinger could say. But there's still reason to believe that he could struggle out of the gate. And like we said, not a great spot. Justin Steele, if there is one redeeming quality for Justin Steele so far through his career, is that he's been able to hold lefties at bay at almost an elite level. 36% K rate, 111 average allowed, 0.87 home run per 9. His bugaboo throwing strikes against lefties. So maybe Yelich can steal some trips to first base if he's patient enough. I don't think I'm going to roster any Justin Steele. I think Rasmussen gives me a little bit more upside for about $1,000 more on DK. So I think I'm just going to go that route. If that burns me, it burns me. But Steele just has a lot to be worried about against righties. So last year, 4.78 xFIP, below 20% K rate, over 2 home run per 9. I do think those 2 home run numbers are probably unlucky with the 48% ground ball rate and a 24% hard contact rate. But the strikeout numbers are they're true. So I probably just don't know that there's enough upside. If you want to take a shot at Steele and hope he gets you hitter points, 10, 12, I wouldn't fault you. It is A+ environment today for pitchers in Wrigley. A little wind coming in, it's cold, and we're not projecting the Brewers to go all the way off here. But I do think for 1,000 more, I can maybe chase a little bit more of a ceiling with Rasmussen. But I will have some Brewers bats. You mentioned McCutchen, big numbers against lefties all time. Last couple of years, almost a 280 ISO against lefties, almost a 1.0 OPS, and leading off here, getting maximum at bats. I definitely like his chances. The FanDuel viability for the Brewer stack versus the DK is just incredible. There's such cheaper prices on FanDuel versus some of their DK prices. So as the season progresses, and maybe some of these price points are not set for the right pitcher, since this is a series that had a postponement already. But as the season progresses, you guys that are newer to MLB, you might learn to start trusting one site or the other for pricing algorithm. And in this case, if you did, DK values a lot of these guys way more than FanDuel does.
All right. Before we get to our bridge game here, I'm feeling like we should have a promo. Let's talk about Fastball. We're going to celebrate the return of baseball this year with a $1 MLB Express weekly pass. If you want to get in behind the paywall, you can get the Express Pass here. Just use promo code FASTBALL at the checkout page. It will just cost $1. This is a great way to get into MLB DFS. This promo expires on Monday. You will get access to the player rankings, the ownership rankings, the lineup builder, and most importantly, in my opinion, the Discord, which is very, very helpful. A lot of discussions there, a lot of good ideas coming at the beginning of the season as we continue to dust off and remember what the heck did I like to do in baseball just 6 months ago, and move forward with that. So when we say the player rankings and the ownership rankings, what that means is you're not getting the actual, the 0.7 or 7.7 for your hitter projection. That works perfectly fine in baseball because it's a very an event driven sport. Your guy gets a home run or he doesn't. He gets a base, extra base hit, RBI extra base hit, which is a lot of points, or he gets a walk, right? So the rankings sort of help you see where they are and sort of what to do with cutoffs in the player pool. Same thing with the player, the ownership rankings. As long as you kind of know who the top pitchers are, you can adjust from there and create your own leverage, et cetera, by pivoting in other directions. So for baseball, I think this is the best of all the Express packages we have, because for baseball, everything's so directional, and it's a sport, as they like to say, based on failure, right? The best hitters, if they succeed 1 out of every 3 times, they're going to end up in the Hall of Fame. That just seems crazy, doesn't it, Gunn?
It definitely a lower bar than most of us have to live by, right?
All right, so let's get over quickly to the Texas game. Again, this is just on the all-day slates. I'm sure there will be some single game contests for it. This one is Dane Dunning going against Kevin Gausman. This is taking place in Toronto. I suspect this is in Toronto, right? Yeah. Okay. So I was like, wait a second, that was last year that they were down in their spring training sites and in Buffalo. So I think they'll probably have the roof closed, because I know it's not particularly warm in Toronto right now. Gausman makes his return to the American League East. He had a phenomenal career year last year with San Francisco, put up some fantastic numbers. Texas, while they did bring in Corey Seager. They've got, Brad Miller on his 7th major league team. These are not a scary lineup at all. They've got Cole and Willie Calhoun, no relation on this one. And this is just not a scary team whatsoever. So I think Gausman is an intriguing option, especially on the all-day slates, because not a lot of sites are going to talk about him because it's not on one of the popular slates. So that is somewhere that you can look at. Anything you want to throw out here as part of the discussion, other than Dane Dunning sometimes looks like he's throwing batting practice.
Yeah. So the Rangers picked up I think a new pitching coach, and one of the things they worked on the offseason was developing this slider that we saw John Gray use in the spring training. He used yesterday. Apparently Dane Dunning's also been trying to use this slider, so maybe we'll see if that helps him out. But his underlying metrics, and we kind of had faith that John Gray could be better. We don't quite know what to expect from Dane Dunning, so that's the pitcher we're going to be looking at. And I wouldn't be too results oriented if he did have a survivable first couple innings against the Blue Jays like John Gray did. What we also learned yesterday is that this Rangers bullpen is not prepared for this Blue Jays offense. I mean, they were down 7 runs last night, EMAC, and exploded once I think John Gray had a blister develop and they had to yank him. This is a dangerous offense that the Blue Jays are rolling out. So even if Dane Dunning ends up being a solid number 2, number 3 starter for them down the road, I think any pitcher is susceptible to getting got against this Blue Jays offense. So I would certainly get shares to this Blue Jays team. And then Kevin Gausman, is an interesting case. I'm going to be watching him pretty well in the first couple starts. You know, he had that incredible season out there for the Giants. Super Plus Park. This division and this park going to play a little bit different, especially as a guy who had a 44% ground ball rate to righties last year, 41% to lefties. Ground balls play a little different in Rogers Center, so we'll see if he can kind of sustain those great numbers. But what you can't take away from him is his strikeout numbers have been great for the last 2 years, flirting with an aggregate of 30% to both sides of the plate. So those numbers will work. That dog will hunt. So I do like taking some stabs at Gossman where you can get him, especially if you're playing with the field that maybe don't have the resources to research this game as much as they have researched the rest of these early games. So like you said, maybe a little extra boost for lower ownership. And sometimes you see lower ownership in the last game anyway, just because it's the last game. So give me some Gossman, give me some Blue Jay stack. With that said, I think the Rangers offense this year, at least in the first couple of weeks, may go under noticed. I think they have some fun bats. I think Miller, Marcus Semien, Corey Seager, Adolis Garcia, that stack's going to win some tournaments this year. So maybe Gossman isn't the guy to do it, but you saw they got to Jose Berrios quick, fast, and in a hurry yesterday. So, you know, I do think that if you're running 100, 150 lineups, you probably don't have to give up too much equity to be above your field in Ranger stacks and hedge some of that Gossman exposure if you think the turf might run a little bit different for him.
All right, I'm going to let you pull up the bond detector, see what's going on there. I want to remind everybody of another promotion we have. As Gunn looks for the home run calls for the early slate, we've got the Awesemo MVP program. This is entirely free. All you've got to do is sign up by texting MVP to 656-4417. That number will be put on the screen here shortly. I will also drop it into the Slack chat, into the YouTube chat, but this gives you a couple of nice opportunities here. We are doing some giveaways. We're doing some different discounts for people that become MVP members. We have a 50% off Awesemo Weekly Plus a coupon available right now. This is something you'll want to take advantage of. We're also bringing out new tools and features that we are putting into beta testing, and you will get the first opportunity to work with these tools. This is something that you do not need to have an actual Awesemo subscription for. So it's something that for those of you that are on a budget, check it out. Plus with the various discounts and stuff that will be popping up from time to time, you definitely want to, you'll be able to get behind the paywall for something less than full freight. But you can also find this information at awesemo.com/text. Okay, we're headed into our our afternoon slate, I guess. I will be watching this after I take a nap, so it will feel like an evening slate for me. But we've got a 4-gamer here leading off with Boston and let's see, is it Boston and New York that is in this one? Why, yes, I see somebody wearing some Yankees garb, so we'll let them talk about the Yankees. But for this game, we have Nick Pivetta taking on Luis Severino, who was a jackass and deservedly was suspended last year, so that's why we haven't seen him.
No.
Wasn't he the guy?
That was Domingo Germán.
Oh, it wasn't Severino.
No, Severino was hurt. Domingo Germán was.
Oh, thank you. So, all right. Well, we'll call it Jackass. 1, me. 2, Domingo Germán. All right. There we go. We got that taken care of. But he's only pitched 18 innings since the end of the 2018 season. That's a little bit scary there, Gunn. What are your thoughts on that? Do you want to tangle with the Bo Sox?
I mean, they bring it. This is a intense series. Garrett Cole started the first inning yesterday with 4-pitch walk to Kike, and Rafael Devers instantly made him pay. Was able to shape up after that, but I think it's a little too early to instill too much confidence in Severino. But we do know, a couple years ago when he was on his A game, he was arguably the best pitcher in baseball for half a season. So if he can get back to that level, I'd certainly be rostering him throughout the season. We've seen him look good in the short sample size that we do have. He did struggle in spring training a little bit, lost an inning. but I don't think I would be too confident in clicking his name today for DFS. But it is a shortened slate. However, I just don't think today's the day. I think we do have some serviceable options elsewhere. Same time, it's one of those, do I want to pitch him? Probably not. Do I want to stack against him? Probably not. So maybe I just play both sides of the fence, but no Severino for me. And more than likely, no Pivetta for me, though I'm never surprised if someone accidentally gets, a strikeout per inning or more against the Yankees.
Yeah, he's someone that just had all those underlying tools and just never quite put it together. Pivetta, that is, showing it looked like he was going to have his breakthrough 2 seasons ago, never really capitalized on it. We see that a lot with pitchers. Sometimes when we think that they're just starting the trajectory of their improvement, that turns out it's the ceiling. So, hey, sometimes that happens. But I agree with you. This one feels like, if I get a few people on either side into my lineup or either one of these guys as a secondary pitcher for me, particularly over there on DK, no real issues with that, but nothing that I'm chasing. There will be plenty of times where we're looking to take both sides of action from these storied franchises. Just doesn't really seem that way today, partly because we have 2 excellent pitching options in our next game. You've got the Miami Marlins at San Francisco. Pablo Lopez on the mound for Miami. You've got Carlos Rodon taking the mound for the first time, I believe, for a team other than the White Sox. He is pitching for the Giants now. This is so a couple things we want to remember. One, all the weather is kind of cool, like it always is in San Francisco. So that doesn't make San Francisco stand out quite as much as it normally does. And then additionally, 2.5 seasons ago, they refurbished their outfield, putting in a deck terrace area, which sort of changed the airflow pattern within the stadium. And they also moved the bullpens out to the outfield. So they kind of curtailed, I think they called it Doubles Alley, but they sort of brought in the fences a little bit, and it made it more of a pitching neutral, hitting neutral park rather than the extreme 20% discount that we used to see on offenses here. The other thing we want to remember is they were one of the stadiums that also had a humidor secretly. And now we know all stadiums have a humidor. Now, what that means is that what they're trying to do with that is to sort of neutralize the weather and humidity effects. So obviously we know that that's decreasing things in Colorado and in Arizona. But on the flip side, in certain places like San Francisco, definitely Seattle, it's going to help the offense a little bit because it's going to change the density of the baseball. So again, it's not this is not a policy that's been created to suppress runs across everything. It's to try to neutralize things. But God only knows, because baseball's constantly dicking around with whatever they're doing with the baseball. So I don't know what to trust, but the science behind this one says it will increase the offenses in some places, just like it suppresses it in others. What do you want to do here with these pitchers? Is this the double stack? Handcuff them together, try to box that win?
Yeah, absolutely. On that middle slate, looking forward. There's Gibson, Cole Irvin, Zach Plesac, Brad Killer. This is absolutely pre-flop, the game you want for pitchers. The parks should still play pitcher friendly, even though we're trying to neutralize it. And this is one of the rare times where it's going to probably have one of the higher temps on the slate. But yeah, I think these pitchers are just really good. They had a really fun game yesterday. They got really weird, but Carlos Rodon, if he were able to sustain what he did last year, and if he were able to go more than 130 innings last year, maybe dig into 150, 160, he would have been in the Cy Young conversation. So I like him to build on that. It was easily his best year in terms of xFIP and throwing strikes. So we're going to be watching to see if he can keep doing that. But he does have as much upside as anyone on the all-day slate. But it's definitely probably the most upside on that slate. 35% K rate to righties last year, almost 33% to lefties. Like I said, it was by far his best season, so maybe some regression is due. But what a good spot for him to be in. And last year we saw pitchers that were average to average plus go to Oracle and become elite. So maybe that's a positive trajectory for Rodon. On the other side, I would say the Marlins projected lineup, they do have a couple bats that can be pesky to lefties on a bad day. Jorge Soler, Garrett Cooper, Jesus Aguilar, Avi Garcia, Brian Anderson. Maybe heads some of that, because I would imagine we're going to get extreme ownership on Rodon and Lopez on that slate. So you don't have to give up a ton of equity to be on the other side. And there is some power numbers to be fearful of. But I'd have more of the pitching side here. And Pablo Lopez on the other side, really, really heavy split guy. Average against lefties last year, a 20.7% K rate to lefties, a 4 xFIP. Kept the ball on the ground, though, so that's a great sign, but really good against righties, a 33.5% K rate to righties, a 36% in 2020. So building that part is consistent. Can he build on that and start to get lefties out better? We'll see, and that's going to be important for him because Mike Yastrzemski, Brandon Belt, Jock Peterson, Brandon Crawford, they will all likely be in the lineup today, digging in from the other side. If he can handle those guys and get those guys out, Darren Ruff, Wilmer Flores, Tyro Estrada, Joey Bart, all those guys profile really well to complement his extremely high K rate against righties. So definitely would be my favorite game to stack, throw a blanket over the win, hopefully, unless it goes to extras like yesterday, and hope for the best.
All right. Yes, I just got a note that said I missed letting you talk about the bomb detector. We'll do both slates when we wrap up this one. We still have 14 minutes until lock here, 110 lock. We'll take it up through there. A reminder, we do have a ton of shows coming on after us. There will, of course, be the deeper dive and live before lock for NBA. We've got 2 days left in the NBA regular season. Expect some more wackiness like we've seen for the last week and a half. We also have NASCAR tonight, so there will be a NASCAR live before lock. And then, of course, MMA has a very large tournament today, or a pay-per-view today, so that we'll have MMA live before lock after us as well. 2 more games here. Oakland at Philadelphia. You've got Cole Irvin, who is like mediocre at best, and then you've got Kyle Gibson, who never quite has put everything together, but he did have a very solid year last year. The knock against Irvin is, while he has just a 5.1% walk rate, he doesn't strike people out, just a 16.5% strikeout rate. Low walk rate, low strikeout rate. What does that mean? Balls constantly in play. So that is something that's very, very dangerous when you're looking at a Philadelphia Phillies lineup that has, while they did lose Andrew McCutchen, they've got everybody healthy now. They added Kyle Schwarber. They also added Nick Castellanos. So they are looking pretty good. I think Alec Boehm, if he's in the lineup towards the bottom, he's another cheap source of power in this matchup. Would you consider Gibson among like probably the 4th best pitcher on the slate? I mean, we only have 8 to choose from here, and it's certainly not Cole Irvin.
Yeah, I think what puts him over the edge for me is that Athletics lineup is so bad.
Yes.
Like so many strike. Aaron Nola was easily my favorite play yesterday from pitchers. I think Girardi left him out there an inning too long, and it cost him a couple runs. But that lineup has a lot of strikeout potential in it. With that said, I don't play Gibson for strikeouts. He will allow you to make contact, and that's dangerous. Phillies last year, very notorious for bad defense, and yesterday that defense costed them quite a bit late in the game. I mean, Rhys Hoskins probably muffed at least 2 or 3 throws to him at first base from a couple innings that I watched. And then, if you're gonna have more work for that defense, bad things happen to good people, and that might be something to be fearful of. But this lineup is so bad that Gibson, I think at 7K, I'd plug him in and hope for a shot at 14 fantasy points, and hopefully scoops up the win. One of the larger favorites on the slate at minus 205. So he is implied to at least have a strong chance at walking away with an extra couple of points.
Chad Pinder now batting cleanup against righties.
Chatty Pendergrass
goes from a one-trick pony against lefties that was always a pinch hit risk to batting cleanup against righties. That's how bare this offense is for the Athletics. This is that no money ball is going to save them. Elvis Andrus, who is the just, I'll say punch and Judy hitter, even though no one knows what that means anymore. He's just the epitome of that. You've got Sean Murphy is reasonable. Jed Lowry is pesky. Seth Brown has his moments, but my goodness, the rest of this lineup is just a mess.
It's not what you
want. Just a mess. Because it's like Piscotty and a bunch of these guys were the guys that would only platoon against lefties. Now they're in the everyday lineup. This is not good. Apologies to the A's fans on this one. Anything else you want to point out from this game other than they'll probably put up 10 runs now that we've besmirched them so much?
I mean, stack Phillies. This is a dangerous offense. In Schwarber, leadoff Schwarber is like a unicorn in MLB DFS, and they're even leading them off against Cole Irvin, lefty on lefty. So I mean, Irvin has been a guy that has kept the ball in the park against the lefties, but an extremely high line drive rate to lefties the last couple of years. We're talking 25 to 30%. So hey, Kyle Schwarber is Kyle Schwarber, and this offense this is a dangerous offense. Contact lefty backed by a bullpen that we're not scared of. The Phillies are implied for 5.7 runs. Those of you guys that are new to baseball, 5.7 is probably top 1% of what you'll see daily in terms of implied run total. We're talking cores levels, so they're going to be pretty sought after.
All right, I see we had a couple questions here in chat. I wanted to get to why is Vogelbach leading off? Because people are potentially overvaluing home runs at this point, and they really don't have anybody else.
Baby Kyle Schwarber. We're seeing a lot of teams adopt giving your best power hitter and best hitters the leadoff spot. Donaldson for the Yankees, Ohtani for the Angels. It's just, I think it's a new wave. The best hitter batting cleanup is probably something that's going to start dying out.
Yeah, so kind of in the late 80s, early 90s, there was really a push to kind of make your best hitter instead of the cleanup person the three-hole hitter, because the thought was, hey, they'll always get in that bat in the first inning, and then they'll get more. This is just the extreme version of that, because who gets the most at bats in any game? The leadoff hitter. Here we go. So why not take more runs or more chances at getting some home runs there? Were you doing DFS when Schwarber came up and we could use him as a catcher for a hot minute?
Yeah. Left field catcher, I think, for the Cubs.
Those were good times. Last game of this slate, Cleveland, the Guardians at Kansas City, going to be in the mid 60s today in Kansas City, one of the warmer games. We already have that lineup. It's going to be Zach Plesac taking on Brad Keller. Brad Keller, always an interesting fella. Give up a little bit more power than we'd seen historically from him last year. Still, over the last 2+ seasons, a 125 isolated power. The guy doesn't let the ball out of the infield. What do you want to do here with this game? Because it represents 25% of our player pool on this slate.
Yeah, I mean, both these off. I think the 6K Brad Keller, he could eat some innings. We've seen that happen. The thing with these contact guys that we don't think are going to give up a ton of runs, solid run prevention, and with high ground ball rate, stuff like that. The problem with these guys is if they do let some slip or their defense doesn't make a play, they can't really erase 2 or 3 earnings, right? Yesterday, Max Scherzer gives up 3 runs, but he's able to usurp them with some strikeouts to just kind of, Brad Keller's not going to do that. He has a 16% K rate to righties last year. Lefties surprisingly at 23% K rate, but that was certainly a recent high, if not a career high. And he also allowed a 300+ average to lefties last year. And you mentioned the power numbers are a little bit elevated. The Indians are pretty bad overall in this spot. Jose Ramirez would play just about against any pitcher. At least 5.7 K. I think if you're going to prioritize guys like Lopez and Rodon and maybe taking a shot at one of the pitchers in Yankee Stadium, then and if you're trying to get some salary to pay for the Phillies, it's going to be hard to get to Ramirez at that price point, but maybe that makes him a little bit more lucrative if he does pop off. I mentioned that same like concept, that game theory yesterday with Rafael Devers. He was almost 6K against Garrett Cole. And I thought that if there was one guy that would homer off of Garrett Cole, it would be Rafael Devers, and he did. But how many people are going to roster 6K Devers against Garrett Cole? He came in at single-digit ownership for me. So kind of the same thought process here for J-Ram, because if he did get on base, taking advantage of that 300 plus average allowed, he can steal a base and then just kind of nickel and dime his way to being a really, really solid play. So J-Ram would be somebody I'd highlight here. But this is hard to project the Indians to really get through to Brad Keller. If Keller can't eat a bunch of innings like he's known to do, they dip into the Royals bullpen, and that might be an exploitable spot. The Royals offense looks way more fun. Whit Merrifield, Bobby Witt Jr., Benintendi, Salvi, that 1-4 is really fun. And just like the Oracle situation, the temperatures in this game is going to be amongst the highest on the entire slate at a balmy 62 degrees. So more plus hitting environment than elsewhere, and some breeze going out to left field out there in Kaufman. So I would be interested in a few Royal stacks, maybe not too much, but a few Royal stacks because of some of the talent in that lineup. Even Mondesi, if he accidentally gets on base, might steal you a couple bags.
We're getting 2 steals if he gets on base.
Yeah,
I like that. If somehow he makes it to first. All right, you dust off the bomb detector. I'm going to talk a little bit about Odd Shopper and the Awesemo sister site here. So we are sponsored by Odd Shopper today. This is a completely free site. This is where you can look up different ways to do some sports wagering. This also works on some of these sites, such as, for instance, Prize Picks. Because guess what? We now have a parlay builder here just for Prize Picks. So not only do we have the free Prize Picks information for basketball and some of the other sports available, but it's right here on the Odd Shopper. All you got to do is just click on the button and it'll tell you the best 5-card parlay to put together. A little easier than sorting through things, but that's a lot of fun here. You can shop bets, meaning you can look for different lines. You can also find both from a money standpoint as well as in the player props. Sometimes you'll find different numbers that you can attack. So it's a lot of fun to check it out. So even if you do not have sports wagering in your particular state, as long as you can play on No House Advantage or Thrive or Prize Picks or some of those other sites, definitely check it out. Who do you have for us here on the bomb detector for the early slate?
So in my motto, I look for the magic number 4 or better. Topping out the early slate, Yasmani Grandal, 4.36. Miguel Sano is second, 4.27. Byron Buxton, 4.15. Eric Haas from the Tigers, big power guy, 4.12. Randy Arozarena, 4.07. McCutcheon, 4.05. Brandon Lau, 4.02. So those are all my 4 pluses, and then you get into like Renfro's and guys like that.
All right, who we got on the afternoon slate, the 4-gamer we just finished discussing?
So I don't have that. I thought we were doing only the early slate. So
yeah, you didn't read my run sheet. Okay, that's fine. There was a plot twist at the end.
We're
doing the afternoon slate. There's the MacGuffin.
Yeah.
All right. News guy just sent me a note. He said Aaron Boone is expecting about 65 to 70 pitches for Luis Severino today. So that is key to know. But that's going to take us up to lock here, gamers. So this was a lot of fun. We'll be here every Saturday for you. We won't quite have the quintuple witching hour like we did today with like every major sport taking place on a Saturday. Things will start to balance out just a little bit, and especially as we sort of get towards the NBA playoffs, etc., there'll be a more stabilizing factor in you'll be back to our usual cadence of shows, but we still have many shows behind us and another 8 videos on demand that will be coming out throughout the day covering sports wagering and other sites that we are affiliated with. Final thoughts before we leave, Gunbacker? Any
Pitch counts.
conspiracy theories?
No. Well, I mean,
We've been down that road before.
Yeah, no, that Severino pitch count is pretty notable. We saw Garrett Cole get pulled after 3 or 4 innings yesterday, so that would probably take all the sting out of me wanting to pay $9K for him against the Red Sox and make me lean even harder on Lopez and
Rodon.
Yep.
Excellent. All right. With that, we're going to get on out of here. You can follow Gun on Twitter at Gundacker. I am at EMAC DFS. And of course, it is Awesemo _COM. With that, gamers, good luck.